Senator Christopher Bongo will lead the chamber in prayer.
Heavenly Father, please enlighten us as legislators so that we may have the wisdom to create measures that will help every Filipino as we rise above the COVID-19 pandemic. Bestow upon us the resolve to lead our people to recovery as we seek to improve the country's collective health in every aspect. We humbly ask you to endow us with your spirit of compassion to set all personal desires and politics aside so we can put the Filipino interest first at all times. Magkaiba man kami ng pananaw sa politika at maraming bagay, sana po ay magkaisa kami ngayon at magtulungan para sa taong bayan. Mahalaga po ang aming pagkakaisa para makatawid po kami bilang isang bansa. Also, please continue to grant each one of us, especially our brave frontliners and their families, your divine protection from harm. Amen.
Let us remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Sa kanya po'y buhay, lupang hinila, tulad ka ng pag-ibig sa manlulubog. Di ka pasisigil sa lahat ng mundo, di mo na sa langit mong wala. May pinatang ang talang nakapag, hanggang wala ako'y nakuha na pag-ibig ka. Ang tubig ng ayaw ay nagpapay na nagtitigil. Lupa ng araw, tawag, pagsinta, kulay na sa akin ko. Pagkakita na dapat, may nalapit, at matatay na pagkakin sa'yo.
The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Gatchalian, Go,
Present.
Gordon, Ontiveros,
Present.
Lacson, Lapid, Marcos,
Present.
Pacquiao,
Present.
Pangilinan,
Present.
Pimentel III, Poe,
Present.
Recto, Revilla,
Present.
Soledad, Villanueva,
Present.
Villar,
Present.
Dubiri, Senator
Present.
Mr. President, I was not able to respond to the roll call. I have been present. Can we record, can the Secretary record our attendance, Mr. President?
Yes, we will record that. There are six senators physically present and 16 senators virtually present, for a total of 22. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the sixth session Wednesday, September 22, 2020, and consider the same as approved. I so move.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of this.
Reference of Business Message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 1 September 2020, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 7022 entitled An Act Creating Two Additional Branches of the Regional Trial Court in the 12th Judicial Region to be stationed in the municipality of Milang, Province of Cotabato, appropriating funds therefore, amending for the purpose Section 14M of Batas Pambansa Bilang 129, otherwise known as the Judiciary Organization Act of 1980 as amended.
Committees on Justice and Finance.
House number 7023, an act creating one additional branch of the Municipal Trial Court in the cities to be stationed in the city of Malaybalay, province of Bukidnon, and appropriating funds therefore, amending for the purpose Section 29 Batas Pambansa Bilang 129, otherwise known as the Judiciary Organization Act of 1980 as amended.
Refer to the Committees on Justice and Finance.
House number 7024, an act creating 6 additional branches of the Regional Trial Court in the 4th Judicial Region to be stationed in the municipality of Los Baños in the city of Cabuyao, province of Laguna, and creating one additional branch, the Municipal Trial Court in cities to be stationed in the city of Cabuyao, province of Laguna, and appropriating funds therefore, amending for the purpose sections 14E and 29 of Batas Pambansa Bilang 129, otherwise known as the Judiciary Organization Act 1980 as amended.
Refer to the Committees on Justice and Finance.
House number 6975, an act integrating the Palawan State University College of Community Resources Development, PSUCCRD, external campuses in the province of Palawan in the city of Puerto Princesa's regular campuses of Palawan State University, PSU, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7818 and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House number 6976, an act establishing a campus of the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines in Barangay Balubal, Cagayan de Oro City to be known as the USTSP Barangay Balubal, Cagayan de Oro Campus and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House number 7019, an act converting the Agusan del Sur State College of Agriculture and Technology in the municipality of Bunawan, province of Agusan del Sur, into a state university, integrating therewith a satellite campus, the municipality of Trento, province of Agusan del Sur, to be known as Agusan del Sur State University and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
House number 7027, an act establishing a Polytechnic State University in the municipality of Liaga, province of Nueva Ecija, to be known as the Aliaga Polytechnic State University and appropriating funds therefore.
Did you say State University or not State College?
State College.
State College, 7027. Refer to the Committees on Higher Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
House number 7029, an act establishing a Polytechnic State College in the municipality of Cuyapo, province of Nueva Ecija, to be known as the Cuyapo Polytechnic State College and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
House number 7030, an act converting the Abra State Institute of Sciences and Technology in the municipality of Lagangilang and Bangued, Agra, province of Abra, into a state university to be known as the University of Abra and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
House number 6974, an act establishing a provincial office in the Commission on Higher Education, CHED, in Vigan City, province of Ilocos Sur, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House number 7017, an act establishing a provincial office at the Commission on Higher Education, CHED, in the province of Misamis Occidental and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
And House number 7018, an act establishing a provincial office at the Commission on Higher Education, CHED, in the province of Ilocos Norte and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 512, entitled Resolution Urging the Executive Department to refrain from increasing the country's debt exposure to China with the end in view of promoting transparency, safeguarding debt sustainability, and preserving and protecting national interests, introduced by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Economic Affairs and Foreign Relations.
PS Resolution number 513, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the circumstances surrounding the arrest of Abdul Jihan Idang Susukan in the custody of Nur Miswari to ascertain the nature of their dealings and to determine its implications on our national security, introduced by Senator De Lima.
The Committees on National Defense and Security. There is additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 2 September 2020, it designated Representatives Enverga, Estrella III, Benitez, Garin, Caminero, and Kabatbat as its conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House Number 6878, entitled An Act Strengthening the Implementation of the National Organic Agriculture Program, amending for the purpose Republic Act 10068 or the Organic Agriculture Act of 2010, and Senate Number 1318. entitled An Act Amending Republic Act Number 10068 or the Organic Agriculture Act of 2010.
To the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives assuring the Senate that on 2 September 2020, it passed the following House bills in it, which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 7137 entitled An Act Declaring September 11 of every year a special non-working holiday in the province of Ilocos Norte in commemoration of the birth anniversary of former President Ferdinand Edwin Marcos to be known as President Ferdinand Edwin Marcos Day.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House number 7258, an act declaring Mainit Falls and Hot Springs located in the municipality of Brooks Point, province of Palawan, an ecotourism site, providing for its development and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Tourism, Environment, and Finance.
House number 7259, an act declaring Barangay Tala in the municipality of Orani, province of Bataan, an ecotourism zone and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Tourism, Environment, and Finance.
House number 7260, an act declaring the province of Rizal a tourism development area and appropriating funds therefore.
The Committees on Tourism and Finance.
House number 7261, an act declaring the Bakhawan Eco Park in Barangay New Buswang, Municipality of Calibo, Province of Aklan, an ecotourism zone and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Tourism, Environment, and Finance.
House number 7262, an act declaring Mount 387, also known as Mount Batong Amat, located in the Municipality of Caranglan, Province of Nueva Ecija, a tourist destination, providing its development and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Tourism and Finance.
House number 7263, an act declaring the Municipality of Barlig in the Mountain Province a tourism development area and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Tourism and Finance.
House number 7264, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Negros Broadcasting and Publishing Corporation under Republic Act number 8161 entitled An Act Granting the Negros Broadcasting and Publishing Corporation a franchise to establish, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the Visayas and Mindanao.
To the Committee on Public Services.
House number 7336, an act establishing a Technical Education Skills Development Authority Test the Training and Assessment Center in the city of Maasin, province of Southern Leyte, to be known as the Maasin City Southern Leyte Test the Training and Assessment Center and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
And House number 7338, an act establishing a Technical Education Skills Development Authority Test the Training and Assessment Center in the municipality of Bana, province of Ilocos Norte, to be known as the Bana Ilocos Norte Test the Training and Assessment Center and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 1808, an act promoting online transactions, safeguarding the rights of consumers and merchants, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Trade, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Senate number 1809, an act amending Republic Act number 4566, otherwise known as the Contractors License Law, introduced by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Trade.
Resolutions, PS Resolution number 514, resolution directing the proper Senate committees to inquire into and review in aid of legislation the temporary ban on overseas deployment of health workers, introduced by Senator Binay.
To the Committee on Labor.
PS Resolution number 515, resolution expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the death of Miss Maria Azucena Manay-Ichu Vera Perez Maceda, the pioneer of the Philippine film industry, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Zambales who would like to wish to make a manifestation, Mr. President. Senator Gordon.
Senator Richard Gordon, gentleman from Zambales, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the last session, I was supposed to make a report in as much as there have been concerns about my submitting the report. Even if I voted for the main committee report of the Committee of the Whole, I've decided not to make that report today and maybe do certain things that I need to do so that I don't want to divide the Senate, and I want to make sure that at the proper time I can present the report in a less charged manner, Mr. President.
Yes, very good. We will await the actions to be taken by the gentleman before the proposal of the other report.
Mr. President, because it's we're I think on the period of amendments right now, and I don't want to distract all the members from this very important Committee of the Whole report, and so I will temporarily, as I said, refrain from making any report whatsoever that might be construed as colliding with the report, because I know that there is no collision, but I would like the work of the Senate President and all the members to be highlighted, because that was the whole agreement in the first place. This is not a question of sino mas magaling, sino mas mataas. Para lang malaman natin na talaga may problema tayo sa PhilHealth at since nauna na lang kayo, fine, Mr. President. My report was started in August. There are still other reports forthcoming. And so I am going to, as I said, refrain from doing that today. At the proper time, I would like to be allowed by the distinguished President of the Senate to make my report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, kind sir. We greatly appreciate the action and the manifestation of the gentleman from Zambales, Senator Richard Gordon. The Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to our distinguished Blue Ribbon Chair, Senator Gordon. Mr. President, we have a third reading measure online. I move that we vote on third reading Senate Bill number 1563 under, yes, Senate Bill number 1563, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration is in order. The Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
Senate Bill number 1563, an act lowering the minimum height requirement for applicants, the Philippine National Police, PNP, Bureau of Fire Protection, BFP, Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, BJMP, and Bureau of Correction, BUCOR, amending Republic Act number 6975 as amended, Republic Act number 9263, and Republic Act number 10575, and for other purposes. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Dinay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Okay.
Lacson,
Alam mo na ako sasabihin, di ba?
Pacquiao, Pangilinan, the third, Poe,
Yes.
Recto, Revilla,
Yes.
Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar,
Yes. Yes.
Zubiri,
Yes.
With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, Senate Bill 1563 is approved on third reading. Congratulations, Senator De La Rosa.
Mr. President, I believe Senator De La Rosa would like to make a manifestation. May we recognize Senator Ronald Bato De La Rosa.
Ronald De La Rosa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and Majority Leader. I would like to express my utmost gratitude to the principal author of the bill, Senator Suberi, and to the other co-authors, Senate President Soto III, Senators Lacson, Tolentino, Pacquiao, Revilla, Gatchalian, Go, Villanueva, and Marcos. Today, we translate into practice the credo of our former President Ramon A. Magsaysay, who was also a former member of the Philippine Army. And I quote, "I believe that he who has less in life should have more in law." Indeed, Mr. President, with the passage today of Senate Bill number 1563 or the PNP, BFP, BGMP, and Bucor Height Equality Bill, which we hope will soon be enacted into law, we give more in law to those who have less in height. We make an important contribution in addressing the existing social inequality for those who have not been gifted with towering height. It has often been said that we are all created in God's likeness. Unfortunately, those who are not blessed with height are almost always discriminated against in biblical proportions. Who could ever forget the story of David, who vanquished Goliath, a much larger and taller opponent? Today, as in biblical times, we learn an important lesson. The limitation in height will always be compensated by the abundance in heart and spirit. Legislative requirements restrict our vertically challenged countrymen and their desire to serve as law enforcers, firemen, jail officers, and correction officers. If we continue to allow physical attributes as basis of entry into government service, and if, as legislators, we have only done so little to change this practice, are we not shortchanging our people, the Filipinos who give us our legislative mandate? Sa araw na ito, pinatunayan natin na tayong mga senador ay hinalal upang ipagtanggol ang maliliit, literally and figuratively. Mr. President, our people expect no shortcomings from us. Indeed, there is no tall order that cannot be conquered. Maraming salamat po sa pagbibigay ninyo ng pag-asa at oportunidad para sa mga nakararami nating kababayan upang makapaglingkod ng tapat at buong puso sa bayan. Maraming salamat po, Sir President.
Thank you. Senator De La Rosa, is this your first bill or this is second or third? This is your first bill that you...
Second, Mr. President.
Second, all right. But I think we should congratulate you because you just yesterday you had your first grandchild.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lolo na po ako.
Lolo ka na.
Certified lolo na, Mr. President.
Lolo ba to?
Lolo ba to? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Mr. President, just a manifestation on the
Cayetano is recognized. Senator Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. My manifestation might have been better made during the period of interpellation, but nevertheless, I would just like to put it on record. Let me congratulate the good sponsor. But I would like to make a recommendation that when he passionately talked about the discrimination that people who are short experience, I thought it best to also spread into the record that this is something that could be addressed partly. Of course, some of it is genetic, but partly by intervention, nutritional intervention. So perhaps the PNP and all the other similar law enforcement agencies could make it, I don't know if it would be their advocacy or something like their CSR, to look into feeding programs, because a lot of the stunted growth is also the advocacy of our dear birthday girl, Senator Grace. A lot of the stunted growth can be pinpointed in certain regions of our country are very much known for stunted growth, and the intervention has to happen from the start of pregnancy and in the early years during the childhood years. I want to share my experience. I went to I did a marathon many years ago in half marathon in Leyte, and I was a little bit surprised because I've joined so many races, but I found that the people there were, I'm tall to begin with, but I also feel not discriminated, but I feel out of place when I'm so tall and everyone is shorter than me. And it was one of those places that I found out later on really had stunted growth. I think a lot came from the Samar province also. So anyway, I'm putting that on record because there can be timely interventions there, and perhaps a good sponsor would like to include that in his advocacies or to share that with his former colleagues in the PNP. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, the suggestion of the lady from Patero Santagig is very much welcome by this representation. Maraming salamat po, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just like to congratulate once again the good gentleman from Davao del Sur for a job well done. A lot of people now can join the police force and will not be discriminated upon by their height alone or being vertically challenged. Congratulations, sir, for sponsoring this measure successfully. And to all our colleagues who voted in favor as well. Mr. President, we have, if you're ready to accept amendments, we can proceed with the committee of the whole period of amendments, Mr. President. I move to,
Yes,
are you ready, Mr. President?
Yes, if Senator Lacson will do us the favor of staying here so that he can preside, and we will yield the chair. I will go down to the floor. Session is suspended. Few seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of committee report number 107. I so move.
Hearing no objection, same is approved. The Senate President is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Majority Leader, thank you very much. So we are in the period of amendments on committee report
Number 107, Mr. President.
07.
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes,
to
Mr. President.
facilitate the proceedings and with the indulgence of our colleagues, and I'm glad that most of them have sent their proposed amendments so that we will not go back and forth in our virtual hearings or session. They have sent their proposed amendments already. So if there will be no objection from the floor, I will be reading their proposed amendments, all those who submitted their proposed amendments, and then later on, if there is still one or two amendments that you would like to do afterwards, if I did not cover all the proposed amendments, then we can do that, if you don't mind. So, Mr. President, may I be allowed to start with the proposed amendments of our colleagues, and then I will, of course, declare if the sponsor, yours truly, will accept the amendment.
There are no objection. Hearing none, the motion with Senate President is approved. Please proceed.
Thank you. May I start with on page 14? Most of these are all right. On page 14, the first line, add the Roman numeral 1 to Article 7 to make it Article 8. This is the First Amendment, and this will be from Senator Bong Revilla. I accept, Mr. President.
An objection. Hearing none, approved.
On page 80, under the recommendations of PhilHealth, second to the last bullet point after the word admissions, add a comma, and then subject to the submission of full documentation requirements and after the conduct of the necessary vetting processes to ensure that no fraudulent claims will be paid. I accept, Mr. President.
An objection. Approved.
Again, still from Senator Ramon Bong Revilla, add under PhilHealth, for PhilHealth to immediately report on an accurate, truthful, realistic, and data-based analysis and determination of the actuarial life of the corporation to enable it to judiciously allocate its funds and, if necessary, to allow the government to effectively intervene towards the desired plan for the corporation. I accept, Mr. President.
An objection. Approved.
And then to continue, again, add recommendation under various Senate committees for the appropriate Senate committee to revisit the Universal Health Care Law and the National Health Insurance Act as amended with the end view of clarifying the nature and scope of payment mechanisms which may be implemented by the PhilHealth. I accept, Mr. President.
An objection. Approved.
Thank you. Mr. President, moving on to the amendments of Senator Sari Angara. From Senator Angara, add recommendation under DOJ. These are all under the recommendations portion of the committee report, Mr. President. Under DOJ, for the Department of Justice to look into granting immunity to witnesses who will be testifying against erring, corrupt PhilHealth officials, provided that they comply with the conditions under Republic Act number 6981 or the Witness Protection, Security and Benefit Act. Also, in ascertaining whether the witnesses do not appear to be the most guilty, for the DOJ to consider if such witnesses may have been forced by corrupt officials to commit any fraudulent or illegal acts under the circumstances. I accept, Mr. President.
In objection, approved.
Continue, add recommendation under PhilHealth. For PhilHealth to issue a certification under oath that a thorough review of the medical claims was done and that the actual reimbursement paid to the healthcare institutions / healthcare providers are true and correct, period. This document should also form part of the PhilHealth's submission to the Commission on Audit, open and close parentheses, COA. I accept, Mr. President.
In objection, approved.
To continue with Senator Angaro's amendments, add a new section under recommendations for the Congress, and under which are the following recommendations. For Congress to amend Section 18 of Republic Act number 11223 or the Universal Healthcare Act to add in a specific provision which mandates accredited healthcare institutions, open and close parentheses, HCIS / healthcare providers, open and close parentheses, HCPS, to execute a sworn undertaking that the medical claims submitted to PhilHealth and for reimbursement are certified true and correct. For another paragraph, for Congress to pass a measure strengthening the country's existing whistleblower program. I accept, Mr. President.
In objection, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the sponsor.
Yes, thank you, Senator Angaro. We appreciate that. Now, from the Minority Leader, Senator Franklin Rilon, he is proposing add recommendations under the DOJ / Ombudsman, still in the recommendations portion of the Committee of the Whole report. To conduct a thorough and swift investigation on the diversion and malversation of PhilHealth funds through fraudulent schemes, including probable collusion between PhilHealth officials / employees and private individuals, period. The benefits of the Witness Protection, Security and Benefit Act, Republic Act number 6981, shall be made available and extended to qualified witnesses in order to ensure their full cooperation and safeguard them from threat, intimidation, or reprisal. And to continue, to investigate and file appropriate charges against all those involved in the overpricing of the COVID-19 testing kits, period. I accept, Mr. President.
In objection, approved.
Moving to page 85, recommendations under the GCG. After the sentence, the Governance Commission for GOCCs as governing body for government corporations must actively and decisively perform its mandate as a central advisory. And then Senator Drilon wants to insert the sentence, it must ensure that PhilHealth shall function and operate as an accountable, government-owned and controlled corporation within the corporate governance standards and principles of Republic Act 10149. I accept, Mr. President.
In objection, approved.
Still on the recommendations under GCG, add the following recommendations. Review and implement the limits on compensation per dime allowances and incentives of the members of the Board of Directors of PhilHealth as provided under Section 23 of Republic Act 10149. Formulate and implement a reorganization plan in accordance with its power under Section 5 of the Republic Act number 10149. Under Section 5 of the GCG law, a reorganization may be done by GCG on its own and does not need the approval of the President to implement the same. The law states that upon determination by the GCG that it is to the best interest of the state that a GOCC should be reorganized. It shall implement the reorganization unless otherwise directed by the President. Mr. President, may I ask the Minority Leader if, just to clarify, when you say President here, you mean the President of the Philippines?
That's correct, sir. The President of the Republic of the Philippines, that's under the law.
All right. So I accept, Mr. President.
In objection, approved.
And then additional from Senator Drilon, add another recommendation under various Senate committees for the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Universal Health Care to promptly and regularly conduct a review of the implementation of Republic Act number 11223, particularly on the compliance with the competency requirements for the appointment of the President and members of the Board of Directors as provided under Section 13 and 14 of RA number 11223. I accept, Mr. President.
In objection, approved.
Thank you. In the body of the committee report, Mr. President, page 29, still with the Minority Leader. Insert a new section after the discussion on IRM. He proposes Roman numeral number 2, overpriced SARS-CoV-2 testing package. It says, the committee also takes notice that when it convened on 20 May 2020 to discuss updates on COVID-19 situation in the country, there were testimonies and documents which showed that PhilHealth's SARS-CoV-2 testing package was overpriced. On 8 April 2020, Mr. Morales signed PhilHealth Circular number 2020-0010, which provided for the benefits package for testing for SARS-CoV-2 as follows. There is a presentation on the board, Mr. President. The packages for SARS-CoV testing, package code, description, package amount, it is all there. C190T1, all services for the testings are procured and provided by the testing laboratory, 8,150. C190T2, test kits are donated to the testing laboratory, 5,450. C190T3, test kits are donated to the testing laboratory, semicolon. Cost of running the laboratory and the RT-PCR machine for testing is included in the facility budget, 2,710. What was alarming about this was that PhilHealth entered into a memorandum of agreement with the Philippine Red Cross for the conduct of testing for the amount of 3,500 pesos, or in words and figures, per one of COVID-19 tests. Test, singular. When asked by Minority Leader Franklin Drilon about the suspiciously exorbitant PhilHealth testing package, Mr. Morales categorically admitted that they overestimated. And the Minority Leader wants this incorporated into the committee report. Senator Drilon, so if PhilHealth agreed with Philippine Red Cross that the cost per test is 3,500 and Red Cross agreed to this, it means that the cost is much, much lower than the 8,150 that you have attributed to the package. It doesn't require rocket science. Compare 8,150 with what Red Cross agreed at 3,500, and there immediately you can see the difference and the overcosting of PhilHealth, which is inimical to the government because you could have paid less. If you're only paying PRC or Philippine Red Cross of the 3,500, I could not understand how you could have fixed the COVID testing package at 8,150. Mr. Morales, that's correct ho, Senator. Mataas yung estimate namin. To continue with the proposal of Senator Drilon in the body. Indeed, if COVID-19 tests could be done by Red Cross for as low as 3,500, then no justification for the higher rates set by PhilHealth. Following the discovery of the overpricing and uproar it caused, PhilHealth revised its SARS-CoV-2 testing package in 22 June 2020 by issuing circular number 2020-0017 to wit, colon. Again, on the board, Mr. President, packages for SARS-CoV-2 testing for RT-PCR, the same three package code that I mentioned earlier, but this time one is 3,409, two is 2,077, and three is 901. Senator Drilon raised the issue anew during the committee's hearing on 4 August 2020. To continue with the proposed amendment. Senator Drilon, okay, so I go back to my previous question. Initially, the COVID test package was indicated at 8,150. When I started raising the issue of overpricing this test package, you came out with 3,409 per my records. In other words, you were able to reduce this. And if we do not create noise here, if we did not call your attention on the basis of 2 million projected tests that will be done, that's roughly 9 billion in funds of PhilHealth which would have been wasted. But having said that, may we know if there were hospitals who availed of the interim reimbursement mechanism using the old rate of 1,150? Mr. Morales, 8,150. Mr. Pargas, Mr. President, Senator De Leon, so far, for dashboard record as of July 31 for the 8,150 package, there were around 2,181 claims which are already paid. Senator De Leon, 2,389 claims. Mr. Pargas, this is Senator De Leon talking. Mr. Pargas, 2,181 claims. Senator De Leon, 81 claims. Mr. Pargas, for testing po. De Leon, okay. Mr. Pargas, that is divided to, for the 8,150, paid cases are 40. For those 5,450 wherein the test kits are actually donated to the laboratory, it is 2,075. And for those that the kits are actually donated, including the cost of the running of the laboratories, are actually included in the facility budget, 66 claims. So that this is in total of 2,181. But for the 8,150, 40 claims. Mr. Morales, may I explain, Senator Drilon, regarding that? Senator Drilon, before that, how did you arrive at 8,150? As far as I know, the true cost, if you look at it from the start, would not have gone anywhere near that amount. And in fact, that's validated by the fact that you were able to reduce it to 3,409. So the first question, sir, sorry, before anything, how did you arrive at 8,150 when in the case of Red Cross agreed to 3,500? Isn't this an indication of the true cost? Will already some margin of this COVID test package? Mr. Pargas, Mr. President, Senator Drilon, for the testing packages, especially the first one, the 8,150, we were able to get the initial cost estimates generated on the week of March 16 and was finalized on March 20. During then, there were only few testing kits and also there were only several accredited laboratories or licensed laboratories to do that. Now, the package includes not only the testing kits, but rather it also includes the clinical assessment, the clinical diagnosis, then that time, the specimen collection, including the specimen transport, because the laboratories and the swabbing can be done outside the laboratory, but has to be transported to the accredited laboratory, and of course, the PCR testing kit. Senator Drilon, okay, I will not waste my time of the committee, but I am prepared to submit to the committee the true cost. To start with, the Sunsure, which is the supplier of this, can do the test kits at something like $15. And then you have laboratory costs, etc., etc., etc. Your 8,150 is out of this world. And this is why when we started to question this, there was no dispute. You did not dispute it, and you immediately lowered it to 3,400. While the PhilHealth has since adjusted the rate, its responsible officers are not free from liability for their incompetence and for entering into transactions that are manifestly and grossly disadvantageous to the government. Were it not for the timely intervention of the Senate, the government would have lost at least 9 billion pesos computed based on the difference between 8,150 and the Philippine Red Cross 3,500 package multiplied by the targeted 2 million tests. I accept, Mr. President. Those are the amendments of Senator Vilon.
Any objection? Approved.
Now, moving to the amendments of Senator Joel Villanueva, Mr. President. He would want a new section under recommendations for the Department of Information and Communications Technology, DICT, and under which add this recommendation. DICT must clarify through appropriate issuances the process which agencies must follow in amending their previously approved Information System Strategic Plan, ISSP, in open and close parentheses. More particularly, it should allow, if possible and practicable, and subject to consultation with various stakeholders, the processing or review of amendments to an agency's previously approved ISSP even prior to the approval of their corporate operating budget, COB, in open and close parentheses. This way, board meetings and resolutions approving budgets for its equipment and for IT equipment and services are guided by the ISSP prior to any budget approval and or release of budget for procurement. I accept, Mr. President, from Senator Villanueva.
Any objection? Approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Congrats to Lakers.
Thank you, Thank you, Senator Villanueva. That keeps me going. From Senator Ping Lacson. He would have proposed it, but he's presiding, so I will read it. So include in the recommendations under section the number of cases violation of Article 217 of Act Number 3815, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code as amended, that should be filed against the erring PhilHealth officials, particularly the group of Secretary Francisco Duque III, Brigadier General Ricardo Morales, Mr. Renato Limsiaco Jr., Mr. Israel Pargas, and all other PhilHealth officials and employees who connived with and participated in the consummation of the punishable/illegal act, period. To be specific, comma, add in the third column of the table under penalties, at least, in open and close quotations, at least 631 counts of malversation of public funds or property. Number one, the penalty of prisión correccional in its medium and maximum periods, if the amount involved in the misappropriation or malversation does not exceed 40,000 pesos. Number two, the penalty of prisión mayor in its minimum and medium periods, if the amount involved is more than 40,000 pesos but does not exceed 1,200,000 pesos. Number three, the penalty of prisión mayor in its maximum period de reclusión temporal and its minimum period, if the amount involved is more than 1,200,000 pesos but does not exceed 2,400,000 pesos. Number four, the penalty of reclusión temporal in its medium and maximum periods, if the amount involved is more than 2,400,000 pesos but does not exceed 4,400,000 pesos. I accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
Again, to continue with the Lacson amendments, add under recommendation under DOJ Ombudsman. to have a thorough review of the biddings and procurement contracts worth millions of pesos and look into the allegations relating to recurring winning bidders and possible collusion. I accept, Mr. President.
No objection. Approved.
To continue, add a new section under recommendations for DOH Secretary Francisco Duque III, and under which is this recommendation. To heed the call of the 14 senators who signed Senate Resolution number 362, recommending the resignation of the Secretary of Duque for his failure of leadership, negligence, lack of foresight, inefficiency in the performance of his mandate, resulting in poor planning, delayed response, lack of transparency, and misguided policies and in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, evidence of conflict of interest, and perceived tolerance in the massive corruption in PhilHealth under his chairmanship, leaves him with no decent option but to resign. Period. The public has suffered enough and can no longer wait for the Secretary of Health's soul-searching endeavor.
An objection.
Mr. President, before I accept,
Sorry.
let me let me place on record, because I keep on hearing Secretary Duque in the media and the pronouncement saying that he does not have anything to do with it and he was not aware. Something to that effect. Mr. President, we find it really, as we look into the records, Secretary Duque is liable for the unlawful and illegal release of IRM funds because in the board of directors, in both the old law and the Republic Act number 7875, the National Health Insurance Act of 1995, under the board of directors, the composition of the corporation, if you will look at it, it says the corporation shall be governed by a board of directors. When we all know what we mean by govern. Now, hereinafter referred to as the board, composed of 11 members as follows. Number 1, the Secretary of Health, period. Number 2, the Secretary of Labor and Employment or his representative. Next, the Secretary of DILG or his representative. Secretary of DSWD or his representative. President of the corporations, President of Labor, etc., etc. Mr. President, it is very clear in the law. Siya lang, yung Secretary of Health, ang hindi pwedeng his representative or his representative. Siya talaga. So hindi pwedeng, di ba, na andun yung representative or something to that effect. So with that, Mr. President, I accept the amendment of Senator Lacson.
An objection. Approved.
To continue, Mr. President, still with the recommendations of, from Senator Lacson, for PhilHealth, to add the following. Among the proposals to allow expeditious and efficacious conduct of the COA audit are as follows. A, access to PhilHealth fraud investigation reports, which are only accessible to the office of the PhilHealth President and Chief Executive Officer and the anti-fraud units of the corporation. Semicolon. B, access to an offline clone of the entire PhilHealth database for COA to conduct some procedures outside PhilHealth network and office premises, such as in the performance of cross-agency data analytics, open and close parentheses, i.e. data comparison from PSA records, to produce more relevant audit information, semicolon, and, comma, letter C, deputization to conduct investigations of HCIS and HCPS, considering that presently, private institutions are not within the ambit of COA's audit. Period. I accept, Mr. President.
Before we act on the motion, I'd like to just place into the records that the proposals mentioned by the Senate President are not originally mine. They are contained in the 21 June 2019 letter of COA Commissioner Pabia to Secretary Duque himself as the chairperson of PhilHealth Board of Directors. The recommendations serve as concessions to be made with PhilHealth to aid in the expeditious and efficacious conduct of COA's audit to curb fraud and improve the existing systems and processes, to which Secretary Duque did not bother to take action, nor did he have the courtesy of responding to the letter of Commissioner Pavia. Instead, it was Jovita Aragona, the Senior Vice President, who responded in a letter reply dated 8 July 2019, reasoning out that the proposals made by COA auditors will put PhilHealth at risk of violating the stringent requirements of the Data Privacy Act of 2012. But, you know, SPP Aragona's position became untenable with the issuance of Privacy Policy Office Advisory Opinion number 2020-016 by the National Privacy Commission itself, saying that, and I quote, "We must be reminded that the processing of information necessary in order to carry out the functions of public authority in accordance with the constitutionally or statutorily mandated function pertaining to law enforcement or regulatory function subject to restrictions provided by law is one of the instances where the application of the Data Privacy Act of 2012 or DPA and of the DPA's IRR is qualified or limited. This means that when the personal information is needed to be processed by a public authority such as the COA, pursuant to its constitutional mandate, the processing of such personal data is generally allowed by the aforementioned enactments. So just to add to the enlightenment of the sponsor and our distinguished colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to continue, still the Senator Lacson amendments, still under PhilHealth in recommendations. Include a specific provision on the guidelines of all case rates, which shall provide that reimbursements should be based on member patients' actual hospitalization charges and professional fees, or the amount of all case rate, whichever is lower. PhilHealth incurs significant operational losses from the many cases when HCIS and HCPS were reimbursed the full amount per all case rate, even though the actual hospital charges and professional fees incurred by the member patients were lower. With the inclusion of such provision, the policy will not appear to unduly favor HCIS and HCPS to the detriment of the agency and of the government. Still on this point, another paragraph. To maximize the utilization of the machine learning identification, detection, and analysis system, MIDAS, in order to effectively and efficiently validate voluminous claims data and detect overutilization, multiple claims, and other fraudulent activities. I accept, Mr. President.
An objection?
Mr. President, yes, I have a concern.
Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President and Mr. Senate President sponsor, I have a very serious concern with that amendment because the very nature of the case rate is it averages the expense of an ailment across all types of health facilities. So whether you are a very high-end private hospital, let's say St. Luke's, Makati Med, or a very low-end small public hospital in the province, they study that rate and create an average. And that does away with all the meticulous reporting of Q-tips, cotton buds, syringe, paper cloth, all the medicines. Kasi otherwise, every single ailment would have to be itemized by the medical professional and the hospital and submitted to PhilHealth. And that is why the case rate system is considered the gold standard all over the world because it allows an easier system to deliver the service immediately and payment should be done immediately. It is not flawless, and there have been criticisms on this, but it far outweighs the disadvantage of one by one itemizing these expenses, including professional fees na na-itemize din if we go back to the per fee system. That is called the fee for service. I can explain this longer to anyone who would like to understand it better, but the minute you introduce the concept that whichever is lower, then you are basically shifting to the fee for service. And that is exactly the opposite of the case rate system, which is institutionalized now in the Universal Health Care Act. So that's the brief explanation, Mr. Sponsor. I feel very strongly about it because yun nga po, it is the gold standard of the world. The developmental partners of DOH and PhilHealth, ito ho yung mga WHO, and even our local health experts from PGH and all across the medical association support po the case rate system. So I strongly urge that we not include that kind of language. But I have language, and when my time comes, my proposal really is to support the case rate and put in the other safeguards so that we minimize the abuses of the case rate. But we cannot go back towards fee for service, Mr. President, with all due respect.
But you do not have any objection to the second paragraph, the utilization of the MIDAS. Wala, no?
Fortunately, I don't even know what the MIDAS is, Mr. Chair. So as long as hindi ho siya bumabalik, as long as hindi ho siya Yes, opo.
Right, all right. Sige. May I have a 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President. 1 minute suspension.
Conferring with the author of the proposed amendment, he is willing to listen to the proposal of Senator Pia Cayetano later. So what we can do is that I move to table the proposed amendment from the start of the recommendations from include a specific provision on the guidelines of all case rates all the way to the detriment of the agency and of the government, period. I move to table that particular proposed amendment. We can take it up later after Senator Pia Cayetano.
Any objection? Approved.
And then I accept the MIDAS paragraph. Maximize utilization of machine learning identification detection analysis system in order to effectively, efficiently validate voluminous claims data and detect the overutilization, multiple claims, and other fraudulent activities. I think this is very important. I accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
All right. On page 86, under the recommendations for Anti-Money Laundering Council, after the word accounts, insert, moreover, the mysterious deposit of 9.7 million that was intended for reimbursement of B. Brown Avitum Philippines in PRO2, but ended up into the demand deposit account of Rural Bank of Balanga registered in the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas should also be looked into by the AMLAC or AMLC to determine how and who made the said deposit possible, period. This is also to resolve, excuse me, Mr. President, excuse me po. This is also to resolve how errors in PhilHealth's payment to HCIS become possible despite the presence of its auto credit payment system. I accept, Mr. President.
In objection.
Approve. Add the new section under recommendations. For the Securities and Exchange Commission, to aid the investigation on the alleged favoritism with respect to the select HCIS and the Balanga Rural Bank case, the SEC must disclose and make public the incorporators, officers of B. Brown Evitom Philippines Incorporated. Likewise, the GIS and statements for the last 5 years must be disclosed. Accepted, Mr. President.
In objection.
Approved. And then add the following recommendations under for various Senate committees. The appropriate Senate committees shall amend RA 10606, particularly the composition of the Board of Directors of PhilHealth under the National Health Insurance Act, mandating the Secretary of the Department of Finance in lieu of the Secretary of Health as the ex officio chairperson of the PhilHealth's Board of Directors. This is in consideration of the fact that PhilHealth is a government financial institution and that the Secretary of Finance is more fitting to further strengthen the agency's fiduciary responsibility to protect the National Health Insurance Fund. This will also preclude possible conflict of interest between the Secretary of Health and healthcare institutions and practitioners. Semicolon. Amendment of the penalties provided also under Republic Act 10606 to increase the amount and the duration of suspension for violations of accredited healthcare providers. Note that the maximum period of suspension under the law is only 3 months. In case of fraudulent claims, irrespective of amount, the penalty of permanent revocation of accreditation must be imposed. Accepted, Mr. President.
In objection.
Approved. That's it. The amendments of our colleagues, Mr. President. May we now ask the Majority Leader to recognize Senator Pia Cayetano for her amendments.
Yes, Mr. President, may we recognize the distinguished lady from Taguig, Pateros, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Mr. President, may I just ask for a minute suspension, and I'll just pull out my notes. I'm ready with the first two, and let me put on record, as I advised the Senate President earlier today, or I think over the weekend, I had a series of meetings and more research to provide more technical data in our committee report. And since it's very lengthy, I think it's already 12 pages long, I deemed it better to just submit a separate opinion, which I will do. But what I would like to do with the permission of the sponsor is I will pull out, as I have pulled out a few short paragraphs to include as amendments, including the point on the case rate as requested to clarify that issue. And then the rest with the more lengthy explanation, I will just submit as a separate opinion with the permission of the sponsor.
In objection.
I confirm, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
Yeah, in the meantime, yes.
Thank you. Just give me a minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Pia Cayetano, she's graciously allowed us to continue with the amendments if our distinguished Senate President will agree. Starting with Senator Bong Revilla, also has a manifestation or amendment, as well as Senator Risa Ontiveros. So may we recognize Senator Bong Revilla, Mr. President?
Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Yeah, just a short manifestation, Mr. President. I just want to thank the Senate President for accepting and favorably considering my amendments to the committee report of the committee report for the committee of the whole. Thank you, Mr. Senate President, for accepting it.
My pleasure, sir.
Congratulations, Mr. President. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Next in line to propose amendments, Mr. President, with the permission of our Senate President, is Senator Risa Ontiveros, Mr. President.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first of just two proposed amendments. The first is on line 3 of page 7 of the committee report, good sponsor. So on page 7 of the committee report, line 3, after the words healthcare services, I propose to add the following sentence. This is reiterated in section 5 of RA 11-22-3 or the UHC law, which states section sorry, Mr. Good sponsor, which states section 5 population coverage. Every Filipino citizen shall automatically be included into the NHIP, hereinafter referred to as the program. So that's the first proposed amendment, a good sponsor. And this amendment just reiterates that the UHC, as the latest law covering PhilHealth, automatically covers all Filipinos. I so move, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senate
before I
President is
accept,
recognized.
may I know again from the distinguished lady, what page and what line? Because our page 7 on the committee report does not contain that particular.
Mr. President, good sponsor, I'm referring to page 7, line 3 of the committee report, where the phrase healthcare services is found. And then proposing to add the following sentence.
Healthcare services, wait, please.
Yes, Mr. President.
We're looking for it because our page 7 in the committee report is not about health services. Hindi page 7 ah.
Forgive me, Mr. President. Let me just check if I have the latest version.
Ito yun, di ba? Ito. Ito lang ang committee report. There's no other committee report. Our received copy of the committee report number 107, page 7, talks
Yes, Mr.
about
President.
diagnostic laboratory and medical examination services, the use of medical equipment facilities. It's about the benefit, the people by way of benefit packages. Please, you might be talking about another page. What is the heading of your proposal? The heading?
What's the heading? I'm checking the heading, Mr. President. My reference here in the version that I have on page 7, line 3 are the words healthcare services.
Let
Yes,
me look
Mr.
for the
President.
healthcare services, please. Just a while.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first sentence of the paragraph I have here, Mr. President, is PhilHealth is commanded to cover all citizens of the Philippines.
Suspend muna.
So you,
Suspend muna. Suspend.
We may have a 1 minute
1
suspension,
minute
Mr. President.
suspension.
yes, Mr. President. Tapos yung page 9.
Mr. President, what the distinguished lady is mentioning is page 6.
Page 6.
PhilHealth is commanded to cover all citizens of the Philippines.
Yes, Mr. President, I stand corrected. I apologize and I thank the good sponsor for the correction. My proposed amendment, Mr. President, is that after the words healthcare services,
Healthcare services.
yes, Mr. President,
There's no line eh. No, there is no line. Teka. Yun. Okay, go ahead. After the
thank you,
paragraph.
Mr. President.
Yes.
After the phrase healthcare services, I propose to add the following sentence. This is reiterated in Section 5 of RA 1122.3 or the UHC law, which states, Section 5, population coverage, every Filipino citizen shall be automatically included into the NHIP, hereinafter referred to as the program. I so move, Mr. President.
Accepted, Mr. President.
An
Thank
objection.
you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, good sponsor. And lastly, Mr. President, on page 91, before the word regularly, I propose to insert the words pursuant to Section 18B of RA 1122.3. This would be consistent, Mr. President, with the intent of the UHC law to make PhilHealth shift to other provider payment mechanisms such as diagnosis-related groupings. I so move, Mr. President.
I think you'll have to check on the printing. The committee report is only up to page 88 eh.
Oh my goodness. I apologize again, Mr. President. Yes, I will check the correct pagination now, Mr. President, good sponsor. Yes, Mr. President, the amendment I wish to propose would properly belong on page 82, line 4, Mr. President.
82. Okay.
Line 4.
All right. After big data.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Pitak. Yes, Mr. President. And on that page 82, line 4, before the word regularly, I propose to insert the words pursuant to Section 18B of RA 1122.3. I so move, Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President.
An objection? Approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good sponsor.
Thank you.
I believe last to propose some amendments is the our distinguished colleague from Pateros and Taguig. Is she ready, Ma'am Pia?
Yes, I think she's coming up with the 2 amendments, and then the rest would be a separate opinion that she will be filing.
Yes.
And in that case, it does not matter whether we approve the committee report now or later. Even if we approve it later, the separate opinion of the distinguished lady is always and will always be included, because it's a separate opinion, obviously.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I asked my staff if would you like us to print a copy for you so you can follow if you prefer that I read it and then you can follow along. Would that be better? I'm ready to read it, but I'm happy to also give you a copy.
How long is it? Is it 1 page, 1 amendment? Di naman.
Unfortunately, wait, what is this one? They are actually 3 pages, and they are how many pages? 3? 3. Actually, kasi I tried to pull it out of my committee report, which, as I said, is very long. So, sorry, committee report. My separate opinion, Mr. Chair. So, I have about 2 paragraphs for each point. And the total
There are 2 points.
The minority leader
almost 3
is recognized.
pages.
Mr. President, with the
3
permission of the good
3 points,
sponsor,
Mr. Chair.
with the permission of the good sponsor and Senator Cayetano, may I propose, the way I understand it is a separate opinion, which doesn't have to go into the committee report itself. I assume the next step after all the amendments are in is to approve the committee report. And I don't think it is the intention of the good senator from Taguig to have her separate opinion approved together with the committee report, unless we are wrong, Mr. President. So that, as correctly stated by the Senate President, we can just append this to the report later, or make it part of the record without going through the long process of reading it into the record, as we are not going to approve it anyway as part of the committee report, if my understanding is correct. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator
Yes.
Cayetano?
Yeah, yes, Mr. President, I agree with
Yes, I agree.
because
Yes,
it's
and
pretty much,
sorry.
no, it's pretty much like a Supreme Court decision, Mr. President. When a Supreme Court decision is made, it is made en banc. Now, if there is a justice who would like to come up with a separate opinion, whether in favor or dissenting, there's no problem with that. He or she can always incorporate or include a separate opinion into the committee report itself. So perhaps what the minority leader is saying, that it might not even be necessary to pull out 2 or 3 points to include in the amendment, unless it is the pleasure of Senator Cayetano, then I have no objection, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I concur. I concur with both the sponsor, the Senate President, and the Minority Floor Leader. I have no desire to burden my colleagues with my separate opinion. I will just be submitting that separately for those interested in the technical details on case rate system, etc. It will all be there. But because the item on case rate system was brought up, I was not even going to propose it as an amendment. But I think it's timely, because I would like to explain my point on it. I have read it. It's a few paragraphs long. And then the other 2 points, Mr. President, are just additions to what I already amended, just additional paragraph or 2, Mr. President. So I am ready to proceed if unless His Honor would like a copy, and I am checking with my staff if they have already been provided your staff with a copy.
Yeah, it's all right. You can provide our staff with a copy, but I'm ready and willing to listen.
Okay, Mr. President.
Sa case rate yan eh. So, we have
Senator Pia Cayetano?
we have some kind of a
I think you're
grasp.
on mute.
Sige. I'm ready, Mr. President. Yes, I was on mute because I was conferring with my staff via mobile phone that I am ready. Thank you. Mr. President, with your indulgence, on page 80, it's part of the recommendations, and before the recommendation that starts with increase the involvement, I will insert another paragraph. Increase the involvement of COA, so an insertion before that paragraph.
Yes, okay.
I will proceed, Mr. President. Add a new recommendation to read as follows. Improve the cooperation and coordination between the Commission on Audit, open close parenthesis COA, and PhilHealth to ensure sound and ethical spending of government funds. In particular, with regard to the case rate system, which is the gold standard in many parts of the world, COA auditors and management must have a clear understanding of how the case rate system works. PhilHealth, along with its developmental partners and health finance experts, should conduct training workshops with COA auditors and management. COA and PhilHealth should eventually prepare technical guidelines and promulgate orders and issuances aligned with each other regarding the implementation and auditing of the case rate system. I submit. A very brief explanation, Mr. Chair, Mr. Sponsor, is simply that I understand that the technical people in PhilHealth and DOH have encountered difficulties also with COA in terms of their understanding of how the case rate system works. And I can explain that even further later on the paragraph, on the part on case rate. But the only objective here is that from management down to the auditors, they must understand first how it works and conduct workshops so that they understand it when they start auditing, Mr. President. That's all the point is here.
What does the sponsor say?
The minority leader wishes to make a point, Mr. President.
The minority leader is recognized.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, if the good sponsor of the amendment will allow. It does not involve a pre-audit on the part of COA, does it? That proposed amendment does not suggest that COA should.
Not at all. No.
Yeah, because
The sole objective really is for them to conduct the workshop so that they understand what is this case rate. It's a different system that might defy basic logic. So it's that's all it is.
thank you very much, Mr. President. That's all that I wanted to clarify.
Mr. President,
Senate President,
accepted.
any objection? Approved.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. President. May I proceed with the next?
Yes, please.
The next item is on page 82, and this is just before the recommendation that starts with the line for PhilHealth to look into strengthening on top of the page. So before that, Mr. President, I
Before
will
that,
add a new recommendation. Yes, a new recommendation, a new paragraph.
all right. Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you. I will proceed to add a new recommendation that reads as follows. Restructure PhilHealth to ensure that positions are in line with the mandate of PhilHealth and the employees hired are qualified for their positions. It should be pointed out that prior to the implementation of Republic Act 10351 or the Syntax Law of 2012, PhilHealth was focused on membership and collection. This is the reason the majority of the personnel in PhilHealth were dedicated to such functions. However, after the Syntax Law of 2012, the focus of PhilHealth changed as the national government expanded health insurance coverage by providing the PhilHealth premium subsidy for indigent families and senior citizens from the incremental revenue from the excise tax on all tobacco and alcohol products, thus decreasing the need for PhilHealth to focus on membership and collection. But the bulk of PhilHealth personnel were hired for that purpose and are still holding those positions. Due to the changes in the focus of PhilHealth, the organization must have a set of personnel trained in accreditation and provider payment or reimbursement, also known as strategic purchasing. In addition, PhilHealth should monitor HCIs to ensure quality care is provided and there are no fraudulent transactions submitted. PhilHealth needs the support of these technical personnel to perform these critical functions exclusively mandated in PhilHealth. I submit, Mr. President.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
If there is no other amendment,
Senator Drilon is recognized.
Just a point of clarification. We have approved the amendment. Is the good sponsor of the amendment suggesting that there should be a redundancy program in PhilHealth? Because the way I understood the good sponsor, she was saying that the present complement is still geared towards another system of premium collection. Is the good sponsor of the amendment implying that there should be a redundancy program in order to streamline the personnel force of PhilHealth?
Senator Pia Cayetano.
You are on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute, Senator Pia.
Sorry for that. Sorry for that. Thank you so much. I'd like to express my gratitude for pointing that out because he correctly observed that is the direction that I am recommending. I did not go so far as directly saying it because, to be honest, I was cramming my studies over the weekend on this issue, but it does appear that we should consider a redundancy program. So would the minority floor leader like to suggest an amendment to my amendment, directly saying that for PhilHealth to study the possibility of a redundancy program? I am very happy to accept that.
Yes, if the
Subject to style.
subject to style, both in that section and in the section which directs or recommends that the GCG reorganize PhilHealth in accordance with the mandate under the law. So on those two sections, we would propose that amendment, Mr. President, subject to style.
all right. If the distinguished lady accepts that as an amendment,
Accept.
then I accept, subject to style, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
Majority Leader.
Thank you. Actually, Mr. President, and now is the last one on the case rate.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just looking for the proper place. Okay, Mr. President, still on page 82. After the recommendation that reads for PhilHealth to look into strengthening its manpower,
Mhm.
an insertion of another recommendation there, Mr. President.
Mhm. Go ahead.
I will proceed with your permission. Properly implement the case rate system as intended under the UHC Act and continuously update case rate data to improve accuracy. The case rate system is one of the global best practices introduced in the Philippines even before the passage of the UHC Act. It is a fundamental feature of the UHC Act. The objective of the case rate system is to simplify and make it efficient to bill treatments. It is a payment scheme where a fixed amount is paid to healthcare institutions, open parenthesis, HCIs, close parenthesis, per instance of treatment of a specific illness or case. The amount to be paid per case is computed from the average cost of treatment in public and private HCIs, which includes professional fees, medical tools, bed fees, and medicines. Being an average, there will be instances when the payment is insufficient to cover treatment, as it is when a case is more complex, more tests or procedures are done, and if it is in a private hospital. But there will also be times when the payment exceeds the cost of treatment, more likely to be the case in public hospitals. Given the foregoing, the payment to the HCIs are expected to balance out. Next paragraph. The case rate system far outweighs the disadvantages of using a fee-for-service system, which is not only a tedious process requiring the submission of every expense that forms part of the procedure, but has also been shown to be more prone to abuse by way of overcharging what was actually used and overprescribing procedures or medications. Next paragraph. However, we must take note that the case rate system currently utilized by PhilHealth is merely in its initial stages. The next step for PhilHealth is to introduce the diagnosis-related grouping, or DRGs, in the current case rate system as provided for under the UHC Act. DRG classify cases according to the following variables: principal and secondary diagnosis, patient age and sex, the presence of comorbidities and complications, and the procedures performed. DRGs will ensure that benefits given to patients are tailor-fit, as the benefit rates will be modified based on a database of reimbursement rates that will provide average differential cost per treatment. I submit, Mr. President, brief explanation. The case rate system is a complex case, and we also have to graduate into not just always updating the case rate, but graduating into this DRG. Yung DRG will provide different kinds of classification within the same kind of ailment. So kung bata ka, mas maliit yung cost kasi the chances of you having complications will be much less, and so on and so forth. Ito po yung sinasabi ko na medyo mahaba yung explanation ko. That's why it's in my own separate opinion. However, because of the questions raised, I shortened it and I am submitting it to the main committee report with the permission, of course, of the sponsor. Thank you.
May I just say something,
Yes.
distinguished sponsor? The reason, alam nyo, pinanggagaling ko na aking proposed amendment, COA itself, because according to COA, yung upcasing ng all case rates, yun ang source ng corruption.
Mr. President, I'm happy to respond. May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. As I mentioned, Mr. President, in the other recommendation that was already approved, that is precisely why we are suggesting that there would be these workshops and training programs with COA auditors and management, because without a clear understanding of how case rates works, madali hong sabihin na it's a source of abuse, because it can be abused like any system. Again, the example I gave you is if you look at, let's say, pneumonia, obviously St. Luke's, Makati Med, or whatever private hospital will always charge for pneumonia much more expensive than a public hospital, right? And yet the case rate is the same regardless kung public or private. So may savings talaga si public hospital dyan. Now, if we will now go the way of COA and simply say, ay mag-fee-for-service kayo kasi mas mura kayo pag fee-for-service dyan, then we will now open that Pandora's box wherein the disadvantage, we are told, far outweigh the disadvantages of the case rate, because dito naman, they can put in any expense that they want. And the tendency in the fee-for-service, Mr. President, is that they overprescribe because they can charge it eh. So dyan ho yung parang sa US, yan ho yung US system, if I may ask you to visualize whatever you know of the US system wherein ang taas-taas ng healthcare cost, it's because they keep charging it to the insurance provider. Ganyan ho ang mangyayari sa fee-for-service. The doctors will feel the need to keep ordering all these kinds of tests dahil may magbabayad, and that is PhilHealth. And even the abuses would happen that way. Kahit hindi kailangan yung procedure na yon or yung test na yon, papagawa nila. So dun ho yung disadvantage ng fee-for-service. And that is why all the health experts have weighed in on this and they recommend the case rate. In any case, all we are saying is that let's allow COA to be trained properly. And then we can hear from them, no, kung ano pa yung ibang recommendations nila, Mr. President. I submit.
Permission of Senator Cayetano. Senator Drilon is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. After listening to Senator Cayetano, I would really endorse her proposal that we stay with the case rate system, principally because we all know that to give that discretion breeds corruption. That is why a case rate is more attractive from where I sit, because then at standard, it's a standard fee, a standard rate that is paid. And at the end of the day, I think the corruption is minimized with the case rate as against a pay for services, which is subject to so much discretion. The PhilHealth then will be allowed and will be given the authority to allow or disallow a particular claim. And you know what happens in those instances. I would suggest that, imperfect as it is, let us the COA should propose measures to tighten the rules so that corruption is minimized. But I would agree with the good sponsor that to have to go back to the pay as for service system would give so much discretion to PhilHealth that it opens us to more corruption. So I would endorse the proposal of the good sponsor from the gig. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President, hearing from Senator Cayetano and the Minority Leader, and I would like to confer with the presiding officer. The Lakers are calling a timeout, Mr. President.
Session is suspended for 1 minute.
Mr. President, um, we completely understand the point or where the distinguished lady is coming from. We understand it. We in fact, as a matter of fact, we concur. But there is a slight amendment that is contained in the original amendment regarding the issue of case rate. So um, the amendment is, the parliamentary status is that the proposal of Senator Pia Cayetano is on the floor as a proposed amendment to the committee report. During the recess, the presiding officer wanted to infuse a line or two so that the tabled amendment earlier would no longer be resurrected. So if we can ask Senator Cayetano to listen to your proposed amendment, I will adopt it. So that if she adopts it, then we can already approve the particular amendment point. May we hear your proposal,
Senator Cayetano, kindly
Yes, of
read into the
course.
record.
Does His Honor have a copy of my? Will you insert in one of the paragraphs that I proposed, Mr. Presiding Officer?
In page 82.
Yes.
Yes, please proceed.
And then
Senator
she read it into the records already.
Do you have a copy?
Can you read it again, Senator Cayetano?
Yes. Would you like a copy? It's quite lengthy. Can I ask somebody to give you a copy? I think the Senate President staff has a
Yes,
copy.
we'll give it to Senator Lacson now. Dali mo ron, dali mo ron.
Asan yung substantial? To improve accuracy. Ganun lang. Mr. President, I cannot see any major contradiction on the amendment as introduced by Senator Cayetano and my proposed amendment. So maybe we can reconcile or marry the two amendments if it is acceptable to Senator Cayetano. Because my amendment reads that reimbursement should be based on member patients' actual hospitalization charges and professional fees or the amount of all case rate, whichever is lower. So I cannot see how discretion will come into the picture because there's this caveat, there's this qualifier, whichever is lower.
Mr. President, may I respond?
Senator Cayetano.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. President, I understand where the presiding officer, the good gentleman from Cavite, is coming from. And this is also why I go back to the recommendation, like in the case of COA, because it makes total sense what His Honor is saying, no, whichever is lower. However, that goes against the very nature of how the case rate system works. Because the way the case rate system works, it does away with the tedious process of itemizing every expense. It will just be submitted that item number 1, which is case rate 001, has happened, therefore approved, no? Pagka meron tayong or, whichever is lower, then you will now require that PhilHealth, who is already so inefficient and undermanned with people who are qualified to do this job, will now be comparing the case rate and every single itemized item that is being presented to them. That is the fee for service. So technically, the simple amendment of the good gentleman, which as I said, in principle makes sense, actually opens the door for the fee for service. Nagiging fee for service na po siya by giving that or. By providing for that or, you're then saying, pwede ka naman mag fee for service. yes, nandun ho yung captured po yung concern ng ating colleague from Cavite na lower. But yung efficiency ngayon ng PhilHealth to itemize every single one will really be wreak havoc, I believe, on the system of PhilHealth. That's my understanding,
Yes,
Mr. President.
Senator Cayetano. I remember Senator Amy Marcos brought this up during the Committee of the Whole hearing. And she mentioned about, ordinary cough and colds, nagiging pneumonia. So yung upcasing, this is the culprit, as mentioned by COA, in corruption that is very dominant sa operation ng PhilHealth. So, in any case, Mr. President, I will not insist on my amendment if there's conflict with the proposed amendment of Senator Cayetano. I want your committee report adopted right now, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank the gentleman for his concerns kasi they are very valid concerns. But again, I will also repeat, that's why part of my recommendations are that number one, the case rates are regularly updated so that it captures what are the ailments and concerns of the time. And number two din, ang malaking culprit din kasi dun sa situation na sinasabi niyang upcasing is because currently we do not have outpatient treatment. And that is also part of my recommendations, which is already in the separate opinion because I did not want to burden the chair and the committee with them. But that is such an important component because imagine, kung mabibigyan ng outpatient ng tablets or ng medicine, then hindi na siya tatanggapin sa ospital. Ang nangyayari, and I've mentioned this during the debates in the Committee of the Whole, some doctors without malice, without intention to defraud, would agree to upcasing kasi walang pambayad ng gamot yung bata o yung matanda. So kesa wala silang gamot whatsoever, o sige, i-upcase na lang natin yan, pneumonia na lang yan. Pero sa totoo lang, with an outpatient treatment, it would be solved. Now, the universal healthcare provides for outpatient treatment, and I will present you, my dear colleagues, with our next challenge. We have to ensure that the budget for 2021 will now include a budget for outpatient because that will address the upcasing or one of the instances of upcasing.
Right. With the manifestation of Senator Lacson or the presiding officer, Mr. President, I accept the amendment of Senator Cayetano.
An objection? Approved.
Thank you, the gentleman from Cavite. Thank you.
Majority Leader,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, there being no more amendments being proposed, we move to close the period of amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to close the period of amendments and objection. Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move to approve on second reading Committee Report number 107. I so move, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Mr. President,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
I think
move.
may
Yes.
we ask
Yeah.
the
My
majority leader
apologies. Move to adopt, Mr. President.
that is a better motion.
Yeah, move to adopt.
There's a motion to adopt Committee Report number 107. Any objection? Hearing none, we congratulate the Senate President. Approved.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, we'd like to
Session
congratulate.
is suspended for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, my esteemed colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congrats, Mr. President.
Thank you. Session resumed. Before I recognize the Majority Leader, may I just express my gratitude to all the members of the Senate. Thank you very much. This is your committee report. Thank you. Majority Leader.
Yes, congratulations, Mr. President. A job well done. And to all our colleagues, a job well done as well. At least we had come out with a good statement that we will not tolerate corruption in the country's insurance agency that is actually needed by the poorest of the poor for their medicines and hospital bill payments. So we congratulate the Senate President. Sir, congratulations.
Thank you,
Um,
sir. My
With
honor.
that, now we hope, Mr. President, that our recommendations in the committee report will actually be carried over and actually implemented by the Ombudsman and the other agencies, Mr. President. We hope that they'll be able to uh, continue the crusade, Mr. President.
Yes, indeed. We will, and we will monitor the events.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We have that big opportunity because we're having budget deliberations coming soon, so we can actually ask these questions during the budget deliberations.
Yes, the
Um,
Minority Leader is recognized. Majority Leader, if you will allow.
Just a reminder, Mr. President, as the Majority Leader, that we should already print the report as finalized and send it to the appropriate agencies as soon as possible, given the fact that the Department of Justice is in the midst of its own investigation, the Ombudsman is in the midst of its investigations, so that they can, and the GCG, etc., all the appropriate government agencies should be given immediately a copy of the report. I do not know if that is in the report, but if it is not, then we are suggesting that it be done immediately. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, we will do so. As a matter of fact, the Secretariat and the Office of the SP will work on it tonight. First thing tomorrow morning, we will submit the copies to the authorities that should be included in the committee report.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Pia Queta, Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Ontiveros, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to submit for the record so that it can be entered into the records my expression of support for the Senate Committee of the Whole report, together with some additional affirmations about its relationship to our continued implementation of the Universal Healthcare Law. For the record, Mr. President, and congratulations. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
With that, Mr. President, we move on to the second item on our agenda for the period of amendments. I move that we resume consideration, Mr. President, of Senate Bill number 1520 and the committee report number 86. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Consideration of SB 1520.
Mr. President, may we recognize the distinguished chair of the committee, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Very much, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. And again, congratulations to you and Senator Lacson, our Vice Chair, and our distinguished colleagues. This is now we are now ready, Mr. President, for the amendments for SB number 1520 under Committee Report number 86. Mr. President, on we were able also to accommodate a lot of the amendments given to our office from our distinguished colleagues, and we thank them. First, Mr. President, on page 1, lines 1 to 2, after the word "the," delete the words Medical Scholarship Act and replace with Doktor para sa Bayan Act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on page 2, line 10, after the word region, insert the following, including regions where there are existing SUCs offering medicine. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on page 4, line 18, and continuing until line 19, please delete the phrase fails in 40% of the subjects he or she is enrolled in or. I so move, Mr. President. The provision will now read as follows. If the scholar fails to meet the academic requirements of the SUC or the private higher education institution, or to complete the course within the prescribed period without valid cause. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 4, line 27, after the word training, insert the phrase that is undertaken in a private health institution or facility. The second provision will now read, Mr. President, provided further that the alternative return service shall exclude the period of internship and residency training that is undertaken in a private health institution or facility. And so move, Mr. President.
Shall exclude. All right.
Yes,
Any
Mr. President,
objection?
shall exclude, yes.
Any objection? Adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on page 5, we have 3 amendments on section 8. Please bear with me, Mr. President. The first one is on page 5, line 7. Delete 1 year for every year that the scholarship has been availed of and replace with a period equivalent to the number of years prescribed under Section 26 of Republic Act number 11223, otherwise known as the Universal Healthcare Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, on page 5, delete line 10. I so move, Mr. President.
The entire line 10?
Yes, Mr. President. So that line from line 9 will go straight to line 11, Mr. President. So move.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Last amendment on this page, Mr. President, is on line 13. After the word PLE, delete the words and the residency training and replace with the following. Provided further that the number of years served by the scholar in the public health and medical service system as part of the return service requirements, if any, of the SUC or PHEI concerned, or under the scholar's residency training shall be counted in the required number of years of return service under this act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, let me just put on record that these 3 amendments were in line with regards to our interpellation and amendments given by our colleagues, particularly Senator Ralph Recto, that the number of years of return service be aligned with the provision of Universal Healthcare Act. And then the other one with regard to the inclusion of residency training taken in government hospitals as part of the return service. This is to recognize the service of resident doctors in the public healthcare system, even if they are only in residency training. And lastly, both proposals are in response to the requests of medical students and some medical schools like the West Visayas State University in the home province of our distinguished minority floor leader in Iloilo. Thank you, Mr. President. We move forward, Mr. President, on page 6, line 9. May we move?
Mr. President, with the permission of the sponsor,
Yes.
may I just get clarification?
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
That last item, that what you were reading, were you explaining the proposals to us? Because I'd like to ask for clarification in the point where you said that was it an internship requirement in a public hospital? Was that correct?
Excluded po siya, Mr. President.
So sorry. So what?
It's
so what is the
excluded po.
provision?
Opo. if you are doing it in a private hospital, excluded po yun sa return
Okay.
service.
Okay, but pwede kayang ano, because there are areas without public hospitals, no? So private ang meron. So baka naman if in areas that there are no public hospitals, pwedeng counted yon kasi wala nang public hospital doon and nangangailangan din ng assistance doon.
Agree, Mr. President. Actually, yes.
Subject to style
Yes,
na
I
lang
agree.
po
Subject to
yung
style will make sure that it's included, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator
you.
Dia.
All right. So accepted by the
Thank you,
sponsor.
Mr. President. Mr. President, on page 6, line 9, insert a new section 11 as follows, Mr. President. Section 11, training while serving the mandatory return service. The CHED and DOH shall develop programs for the continuous training of scholars while serving the mandatory return service under this act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Let me just point out, Mr. President, thank you. Let me just point out that this is to ensure that doctors serving the return service have access to continuous training. This is currently being done under the what do you call that, Doctor to the Barrio program of the DOH, where scholars have the option to take masters in public health during the period of their return service. Thank you, Mr. President. Moving forward on page 6, line 9, insert a new section, section 12, as follows. This is, Mr. President, in line with our discussions raised during the interpellation by our minority floor leader, Senator Drilon, our principal, Senator Cynthia Villar. Section 12 will read as follows. Medical schools, in order to have a holistic solution and address the scarcity of doctors in the country, the CHED, in coordination with DOH, shall ensure that each region shall have at least one medical school. For this purpose, the CHED shall also streamline the requirements for the application for authority to offer Doctor of Medicine program. The CHED and DOH shall also issue the appropriate guidelines to facilitate the partnership between SUCs and DOH hospitals with a view of increasing the number of medical schools throughout the country, with one region having at least one state-operated medical school within 5 years from the effectivity of this act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, let me also put on record that it was Senator Cynthia Villar who wanted who proposed the 3-year period, and I actually wanted to agree with her, Mr. President, but upon consultation with the Commission on Higher Education, they are more acceptable if it's going to be 5 years, Mr. President, because right now there are about 10 regions na wala pong SUC offering medical medicine program, Mr. President. Thank you. I think Senator Villar is raising her hand, Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Villar is recognized.
We can't hear you, ma'am.
Umalis na.
Yan.
Senator Villar is recognized. Unmute.
Unmute, Ma'am Cynthia.
Okay, unmute na ba?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, the chairman of the committee, Mr. President, promised me that at least one half should be established by 3 years and the rest would be 5 years kasi there are 10 hospitals. Para naman meron na tayo after 3 years. Sabi mo, ilalagay mo sa amendment. That we require 5 hospitals to be established after 3 years and another 5 after 5 years.
Because in the bill, Mr. President, it's already 5 years, so it means all regions, the 10 regions will have their SUC offering medicine, Mr. President. I think it's obvious that by after 3 years, at least half of the targeted
Yeah,
10
can you put it
hospitals.
in the bill that at least half would be established in 3 years and another half in 5 years?
Okay, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
That is fine.
Mr.
Subject
Chairman.
to style, Mr. President.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So how
Mr.
how
President.
does it go now, Senator Villanueva?
Nakamute po kayo.
A particular particular sentencing, Mr. President, in this particular provision that would ensure that after 3 years, at least half of the regions na wala pong SUC offering a medicine program ay magkakaroon po, Mr. President.
All right. So you are proposing that and accept it.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any
Subject to style,
objection?
Mr. President.
Subject to style, huh? Subject to style. Hearing no objection. Adopted, subject to style.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator Cayetano.
Mr. President. Mine is not an objection, but just to let the good sponsor know that I reserved also for an opportunity to submit amendments, and it's along that line. And it's because I wanted to also consult with the PGH and other medical associations on how long it really takes to set up a medical school, because I know for a fact, for example, Ateneo, it's a private school. It has all the means, no resources to put up, but it took time because they have to recruit medical professionals and good medical professionals at that. So more so in far-flung areas. I am not against, of course, I am one with you in being very excited about putting up the medical schools. But may I ask the good sponsor to at least check with these people who know what it takes to put up a medical school and to see if reasonable naman yung requirements, kasi after a while, it will also set our expectations very high, and then tayo rin ang magagalit sa kanila pag hindi nila nagawa. And that's why my amendment, which I'm not prepared to make yet because I asked for time till tomorrow, was along the lines of or increase the capacity in a neighboring province, no? Baka hindi kaya sa Bohol, pero sa Cebu na isang tawid lang naman, pwedeng dagdagan yung capacity. Something along that line. I just submit, Mr. President, and I will make the appropriate amendments tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Something, Chairman and Mr. President. Before I made this amendment, I studied already the combination of DOH-operated hospital and SUCs. And I can give you the names of the DOH-operated hospital together with the big SUCs in every region that we want to build a hospital like Baguio General Hospital and the Benguet State University. They're very good hospital and they're very good university. And I wish to inform Senator Pia that I think 3 of them are applying na before this bill before we pass this bill. There are 3 regions which do not have regional hospital, but they are applying. Which do not have medical school, but their application is already there. So parang kung 5 ang inaambisyon natin in 3 years, meron ng 3 na under application. I think it's Davao City, Zamboanga City, and another one. So parang napakadali in 3 years yung 5. Kasi inaralan ko na to. I was chairman of the House Committee on SUCs. I know them. And I know the DOH operated hospital. I studied them while we are hearing. Because I really, that's why my amendment in the committee report of the PhilHealth, I said that all DOH operated hospitals, 70 of them should have a COVID lab because I studied all of them and they can do it. Okay, thank you very much.
For the information of our colleagues, in Region 7, the doctors are now preparing already for the Cebu Normal University and partnership entered into with the Vicente Soto Memorial Hospital. There is a consortium of the nursing, pinasok na medical scholarship. They're ready with it already. Doctors are preparing. Just for the information.
Mr. President.
President, I think it's Cebu, it's Davao City, and it's Zamboanga City. They're all applying na. Three
Correct.
of them.
Villanueva, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just to put on record, there are three. It's true: Cebu Normal University, Western Mindanao State University, and the University of Southern Philippines, Region 11. Yung Western Mindanao po, Region 9 po yun. Mr. President, I just want to put on record also and commend also the statements made by Senator Pia Cayetano. It's really hard, Mr. President, no? We don't want to also to compromise the quality. That's why we're very careful about accepting the amendment, and that's why we also coordinated with the Commission on Higher Education. Mr. President, just to put on record, under CMO 18 2016, the following are among the required resources to be given an authority to operate or offer Doctor of Medicine program, Mr. President. No? Una ho yung base hospital. Medical school shall have a base hospital with level 3 DOH classification and accredited residency training programs in medicine, surgery, pediatrics, and OB-GYN, Mr. President. The base hospital must be located within the same geographical area, specifically within the same city or province. And then another is medical library. Siguro, ito na siguro yung mas madali pa. But the other challenging input, Mr. President, yung faculty size. There should be at least 20 full-time faculty members in medical school at any time, including the faculty administrator. And then you have faculty qualifications and dean and department chair qualifications, etc. So just want to put that on record, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. So where are we now?
Mr. President, yes, I think Senator Cayetano would like to.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you.
So may we ask the good sponsor to submit to us what are the remaining areas that we still need to target in the next 3 years? And let's
Here, Mr. President, we'd like to project it, the 10 regions, Mimaropa, Caraga, Soc-Sargent, CAR, Region 3, 4A, 7, 9, 10, and 11, Mr. President. And if you would, I think you'd be able to appreciate, Mr. President, that yung level 3 DOH hospitals, available lang doon po sa Soc-Sargent, sa Region 3 at sa Region 7 and Region 11, Mr. President. So yung iba po talagang none at all, wala pong DOH level 3 available hospital, Mr. President.
Yun nga. So how can we make a timeline for that? Because as the good sponsor himself has noted, the requirement is that there is a base hospital with the level 3 rating available there. So that should happen fast. So it should, we have to find out, are there any plans to have a level 3 hospital there within that 3 years? Much more, and second level pa yung ma-accredit yung partnership nila, di ba? But the hospital itself does not exist.
That's
and that
why,
cannot be compromised.
That's why, Mr. President, we compromise with the 3-year proposal to 5 years, Mr. President. So that's the compromise already, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I will send you a list of a combination of SUC and level 3 hospital in all those regions that we don't have. I'll send you a list. I did a matching already, and because I know them. So I will send you. One is Batangas. They have a Batangas Regional Hospital, and then they have a Batangas SUCs there. So meron sa Batangas, meron sa CAR, meron sa Region 3. Ang wala is CAR, Region 3, Region 4A, Batangas, and then wala sa Eastern Visayas, and then may nag-a-apply na sa Cebu. It's Vicente Soto and the, what do you call this, the university, what's the name? Cebu normal. And then sa Region 11, they have a University of Southern Philippines, and then the hospital there is a 1,200 bed hospital, University of Southern Philippines Hospital. I'll send you a list of the combination of SUC and big hospitals in every region in the Philippines. So before you make the amendment, Pia, I want you to see the list. The only
Thank you.
one na wala is Region 12. But yung Region 12, yung kanilang university sa Kabakan na North Cotabato, meron ng sarili siyang hospital, may nursing school na siya, may medtech school and all, kulang na lang ang medical school. May sarili siyang hospital. It's not connected sa DOH, but it's a university hospital. So I'll send you the list of all these missing link, so you will know that merong partnership na kayang gawin. At ang gagaling ng university, ang gagaling ng hospital. So I'll send you. Okay.
Mr. President,
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm
I'll
excited
send you
because
the list.
it's Senator Villar who put together that matching list. Wala na tayong hahanapin pa. Okay
Yeah,
na, okay. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart because kahit pa
one of
matagal na
them
itong
is Batangas City, di ba? You have there a regional hospital and then you have a university there. Oh.
Mr.
For
President,
Region
just
40.
we wanted
Yes,
The-
Senator Drilon, yes.
Senator Lacson is asking me if we are on, if the session is suspended because you're talking to each other.
I said this is,
Yes, Mr.
we feel
President.
very strongly about this. Anyway, I'll send you the list. I will not talk anymore.
Senator Drilon, recognize.
Mr. President, is not an objection to the amendment. I just want to know what are the budgetary implications of putting up these medical schools in the areas mentioned? Is there a budgetary implication? I suppose there is. Mr. Sponsor?
in the bill itself, we don't have anything that talks about the establishment of medical schools, Mr. President. It's all about scholarship program, Mr. President.
No, but
Scholarship program.
precisely, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, the amendment calls for the establishment of a medical school in each region where there is no medical school at this point. And the good sponsor and the one who brought this up to us during the period of interpellation is Senator Villar, and it is a meritorious proposal. The question that since the committee has now adopted this as an amendment, I would like to know what are the budgetary implications of putting up a medical school in the SUCs located in the areas where there is no medical school.
If the sponsor will allow, the offhand, my response would be that we will add to the budgetary requirements of the SUCs.
That's the only way, Mr. President, yes.
Senator Villanueva, sponsor, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, that's the only way we agree, Mr. President, that in the coming budget season, that will be a great concern, Mr. President, in putting up medical school. I'm sorry, Mr. Minority Floor Leader, I don't have the exact figures as to how much is needed in putting up medical schools, but what we mentioned a while ago is that the DOH and SHED would prioritize, Mr. President, the putting up of medical schools in regions na wala pa hong state colleges or university offering a medicine program.
Yes, but obviously this is now mandatory, considering the amendment of Senator Villar, which the good sponsor accepted, and that in the next 3 years, there will be at least four or five medical schools in the regions where there is no medical school, in partnership with the regional hospital. So I think it is a valid question as to how much will be the cost? I assume it is not in the 2021 budget because that has already been submitted. So if it is not, how realistic is the provision that this should be implemented in 3 years' time? I have no objection to this proposal. I think it is necessary. I was the one who brought up this issue, but the Senator will put flesh into it by requiring that more specific timetable. And so the next logical question is, how much is the proposed budget? When will it be included in the General Appropriations Act? Is it in 2021 or in 2022? And how much will it be? Just to
Mr.
give
Pres-
ballpark figure.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, wala pa po, Mr. President. Hindi po kasama yan for the next year's budget, but we will work on it. Number two, Mr. President, we have to also, again, look into consideration the SUC's capability, Mr. President, to put up medical schools. We have heard about the 3 SUCs na nagnanais, Mr. President, na magpatupad ng medicine program. But again, Mr. President, as I was interrupted kanina, ang isang malaking hamon, Mr. President, is like, for example, doon po sa Region 4A, no, doon po sa Batangas, meron pong Batangas Medical Center, pero may kapartner na po sila na university, but hindi po ito SUCs. Ito po yung Adventist University of the Philippines. Ang kalakaran, Mr. President, is that one medical school may partner na one university, Mr. President, no? Para dun sa ating SUCs. Kaya, Mr. President, yun yung challenge, Mr. President.
The reason I'm raising that, Mr. President, is how can we say that there will be medical schools or X number in the next 5 years when we don't even suppose next year there will be no budget for the medical schools? What will happen?
President, sorry.
Suppose next year, assuming that in 2021 we cannot provide any budget for the medical schools to be established in the SUCs, what will happen to the mandate that we have proposed and approved, that there should be at least 3 to 5 medical schools in the next 3 years or 4 years? What happens to that?
President, I think the minority leader and this representation knows very well that if there's no budget, a particular budget for that item, then no medical school will be established, Mr. President.
That is precisely, yeah.
Again, let me point out, Mr. President, that the main objective of this measure is to provide, Mr. President, medical scholarship for our kababayan, Mr. President.
Your Honors, the bill has Section 11 and it's on funding. There is a provision for funding, but there is no amount. But if you will look at it closely, it says appropriation participating SUC, DOH, and CHED. Eh, hindi mo mamalan yan pagka yung tatlong yun involved.
Yes. Mr. President, with all due respect, that funding is for medical scholarships. What we have now is in the amendment accepted that there should be medical schools in the regions designated. I have no objections to that. I am just saying, is this dependent on the budget? Because obviously, if there is no budget, this mandate cannot be fulfilled. That's all that we're saying, Mr. President.
Provide budget for these medical schools in the law.
Yes.
I think Senator Recto would like to be acknowledged.
Senator, the President Pro Tem, Senator Recto.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The issue raised by the minority leader is an important issue. But having said that, let me also put on record that we're only talking of 10 medical schools. Okay, 10 regions, 1 medical school per region. Okay, And remember, there is a matching here. There is already a regional hospital. There must be a regional hospital. Okay, there must be an SUC. Okay, so both already have funding to a certain degree. So assuming the cost to put up one school and to integrate the two together is 100 million, then over 5 years, it is only 1 billion. Okay? Now, having said that also, we are allocating roughly about 40, 50 billion sa CHED every year. The state universities also have, we allocate something like 40 billion every year as well. And they have a trust fund of about 24 billion also, roughly, every year. Okay? Now, having said that, I think that it is also reasonable that within 5 years to put up 10, there might be no budget in the 2021 budget, but remember that the Senate President also mentioned that there are 3 applying already. Okay? We can put the money also in the 2021 budget for those that are already applying to begin with. No? Now, remember that the initial purpose of the bill was to provide a medical scholarship. And we need thousands and thousands of doctors in the country. Okay? And we're allocating, billions of pesos for medical scholarship. Once we do that, that will also go to the schools eventually. So it is an investment. Okay, so having said that, I see no problem really in putting up 10. It should not be a big problem to fund 10 medical schools for the next 5 years. Just for the record, just a manifestation, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amen to that.
Yes, Senator Villanueva.
If we can proceed now, Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 6, line 15, insert a new section, section 14, as follows. Transitory provisions. Upon the effectivity of this act, current scholars under the existing medical scholarship programs of DOH and CHED shall automatically be eligible to avail the benefits under this act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, that would be my last amendment, and I just move that we renumber the sections accordingly. So move, Mr. President.
Yes, so renumbered.
Mr. President, Majority Leader.
Yes, the President of them, Senator Recto.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, let me congratulate the sponsor of this measure. I think the bill is very good. It is very well written, including the amendments that he has presented. Would the sponsor agree that I only have 2 or 3 final amendments to the measure, Mr. President? With his permission, with the permission of the body, may I read them out and provide these amendments?
Yes. Mr. President.
Yes,
Thank you very much. On page 2,
Mr. President, Mr. President, the formal motion is to open the period of individual amendments, Mr. President, and therefore I
Mr. President, what we did is now individual amendments, Mr. President, Majority Leader, because this is a substitute bill.
Okay, my apologies then we may
Still,
proceed.
individual amendments. Thank you.
You may proceed. Yes, this is a period of individual amendments.
Majority Leader, Mr. President, to our sponsor, on page 2, line 11, after the acronym DOH, insert a colon and the new provision to read as follows. Provided further that to ensure the assignment of 1 doctor for every town in the country, the program shall endeavor to establish a 1 town, 1 doctor sub-program that will provide medical scholarships to interested and deserving students from municipalities without or with inadequate government physicians. Provided even further that if no resident from a given municipality qualifies for the sub-program, the allotted slot for that municipality may be assumed by a student coming from another municipality in the same province. Provided finally that the student who assumed the slot of another municipality shall be required to render service in the municipality where the slot was originally intended. That is the amendment, Mr. President.
Mr. President, can we listen to all the amendments first, and then I will rebut if we can agree into something, Mr. President, if
Yeah.
that's okay with
Yeah.
the distinguished
The
gentleman.
first, yes, the first amendment deals with, we are trying to have one doctor for every municipality in the country. That is the ideal. Okay. In fact, during the period of interpellations, we mentioned, or the sponsor mentioned, na kulang nga tayo sa doktor, di ba? And that's why we're providing for a medical scholarship program. And that there are many Filipinos who want to take medicine, sabi nga ng Senate President, pero hindi affordable. Okay? And that's why we're providing here, we're talking about a medical scholarship, and we're also saying that we must try to have one doctor per town. That is the essence of the amendment, Mr. President.
President, in response to that, let me put on record that we recognize the noble intention and objectives of the Senate President pro tempore. For the record, Mr. President, we indicated that the determination of the number and allocation of scholars to be admitted would be based on the National Health Human Resource Master Plan created under Section 23 of RA 112/20 or the Universal Healthcare Act.
Correct.
Perhaps, Mr. President, if it is okay with the distinguished gentleman, if we can propose instead come up with a subsection in page 3, Mr. President. Page 3, after line 19, we can put a new section, which is a section F. We can do it, and it would read as follows. Provided that in the selection of scholars under this act, applicants whose hometown do not have existing doctors shall be prioritized to ensure the assignment of the one doctor for every town in the country. If that is okay with the distinguished gentleman from Batangas.
I wouldn't have a problem which section to put it in, Mr. President, but maybe we can compromise to have our language inserted in that section that the sponsor suggested.
Yes, Mr. President.
I think it is still consistent.
Subject to
with the-
style, Mr.
Yes,
President.
it is consistent with the Universal Healthcare Law. All our amendments here and those that we were able to provide the committee are all consistent with the Universal Healthcare Law, Mr. President. Remember the purpose.
Mr. President,
Yes,
we just want to clarify, this is yung pong doctor-less lang, no? Not in all municipalities. I just want to put that on record, yung doctor-less.
correct.
Wala pong
That is correct.
Yes, Mr.
Correct.
President. Agree, Mr. President, subject to style.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The second amendment is also on page 2, line 15. Rephrase subparagraph A to read.
Did you accept already the amendment? Let us, Senator Villanueva, you're muted. You're muted.
Yes, we accepted, Mr. President.
All right,
We
any
agreed,
objection?
Mr. President, that we will put another subsection F on page 3 with what we talk about, Mr. President.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, adopted, subject to style. You proceed, Senator Recto.
Yes, thank you very much. Just, I think 2 or 3 more, very minor, Mr. President. On page 2, line 15, rephrase subparagraph A to read as follows. A, tuition, laboratory, miscellaneous, and other related school fees.
Mr. President, thank you.
Accepted. Any objection?
Accepted.
Hearing none, adopted.
Okay. On page 5, amend section 8 to read as follows. Within 1 year from the passing of the licensure examination for physicians, the scholar shall serve in a government public health office or government hospital in the scholar's hometown, province, or region, or in the presence of threat for the scholar's safety in any underserved municipality determined by the DOH as a priority area for a period equivalent to the number of years prescribed under Section 26 of Republic Act number 11223, otherwise known as the Universal Healthcare Act, provided that for the One Town, One Doctor Scholarship Program, the scholar shall render a return service work in the scholar's hometown, provided further that the scholar who assumed the slot of another municipality where no resident qualified to be a scholar shall render a return service work in the same municipality where the slot was originally intended, provided even further that such mandatory return service and integration into the public health and medical service system under this act shall be separate and distinct from the mandatory postgraduate internship in a DOH accredited public health facility required by Professional Regulation Commission as a prerequisite for taking the PLE, provided finally, and that's the amendment, Mr. President. It just continues.
Mr. President, it's quite long, and I just wanted to ask our distinguished colleague if he was able to get also the latest development under this particular section.
Correct.
And if I may read, Mr.
I just wanted to insert it in that you read it earlier. You had an amendment. I
Yes.
agree with your amendment. It's so my amendment, because I don't have a copy. That's a problem with virtual hearings, Mr.
Yes.
President. No, we just accepted that amendment earlier, and I agree with your amendment, Mr. Sponsor. It's still in the same section, Section 8. After Universal Healthcare Act, I don't know what line that is. Then the proviso.
That's the
which I
problem,
read.
Mr. President. Sorry.
I know
Because,
that's the problem with it.
A while ago, we moved for the amendment of all
Correct.
three amendments in Section 8. If you want me to read, Mr. President, the entire section that we
Yes.
and
Because
flag
mine
on
only
screen,
inserts
Mr.
it inside the Mr. Chairman, no? So I agree with this because that's also my amendment in the committee.
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. President.
So, yes, okay. I think our amendment is right after the Universal Healthcare Act, okay? Provided that for the One Town, One Doctor Scholarship Sub-Program, the scholar shall render a return service work in the scholar's hometown, provided further that the scholar who assumed the slot of another municipality where no resident qualified to be a scholar shall render a return service work in the same municipality where the slot was originally intended. Period. And
I
then
think there's no problem. I think there's no no problem.
Subject to
with that,
style,
Because
Mr.
You're
President.
talking about, Mr. President, hometown talaga, no, Mr. President?
Yes, yes.
So, accepted? Accepted?
Subject to style.
Subject.
Adopted, subject to style.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. President,
Subject to style naman lang.
Mr. President, the final, I don't know if it's appropriate at this time. We agreed to a short title, Mr. President, but I think that's in Section 1. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. President. On page 1, Mr. President.
Yes, and yeah, we agreed to that, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
On the title of the
No.
bill itself,
The title shall be taken up after all the amendments.
yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. So I have no further amendment at the appropriate time, just on the long title. I
Mr.
may have
President.
an amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to our sponsor.
On the same page, Mr.
Senator
President,
Recto, appreciate it.
Mr. President, on the same
May we
page.
recognize Senator Sani Angara, Mr. President?
Senator Gara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to congratulate and commend our good colleague, Senator Joel, for the good work he's put in on this bill, and the Senate President likewise, who's one of the principal authors, or the principal author rather. I have just one amendment, if the sponsor agrees, Mr. President. On page 5, section 9, line 29, and I hope the reference is correct. After the words MSRSP, we also furnished a copy to the office of our good friend, Senator Joel. We just want to put in an amendment to coordinate the MSRSP, which is the body which provides scholarships for medical scholarships, with the Unifast law. That's the law passed, sponsored by Senator Pia and authored by this representation back in 2015, because the goal of UNIFAST was to coordinate all of the different scholarship programs in government. At the time, there were, I think, 70 or 80 different scholarship programs in government. So if I may read, Mr. President, just to add this sentence anywhere the gentleman deems it fit, the harmonization, rationalization, and consolidation of scholarship programs under the MSRSP shall be in coordination with the UNIFAST board created under Republic Act 10687 or the Unified Student Financial Assistance System for Tertiary Education, UNIFAST Act. If that is acceptable to our very hardworking and dynamic colleague, Mr. President.
Senator Cayetano wishes to get the floor before he recognizes one.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
For permission of the two gentlemen, actually, I just want to confirm and put on record that that's also my amendment, the one Senator Sani just expressed, because we both worked on it together, and his father was really the pioneer with that, late Senator Ed Angara. May I propose that it in Section 9, that's where that I noted that the senator from Valer did not, Aurora did not specify where. So may I suggest Section 9?
Yes, Section 9 is fine, Mr. President, if that's okay with the sponsor.
We also text the provision to the good sponsor for easy reference.
Yes,
What
Mr.
does
President.
sponsor say?
Yes, Mr. President, how can we say no to the chairperson of the Committee on Finance and the vice chair in charge of the SUC budget, Mr. President? And I agree with the Senator Angara and Senator Cayetano. This is very important, and I thank them for their inputs. I accept, Mr. President.
All right.
Thank you.
accepted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good sponsor.
Any hearing no objection, adopted, subject to sign.
Mr. President, let me also put on record, because the last time we were talking about this particular measure, Senator Richard Gordon wanted to be part of this measure, wanted to be co-author of this measure. I just wanted to put that on record, Mr. President.
All right, we place that on record.
Thank you. I think
Anything
that's
else? Are
it,
we going
Mr.
to the
President.
title now? The title, the short title.
Mr.
Yes,
President, Mr. President, may I just request Senator Joel if I can also be made a co-author, if I or did I already
Yes, I think
manifest?
you're already
Okay.
listed, Mr. President. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So, Senator Villanueva, did you amend the title already? You're about
Yes,
to amend the
Mr.
title.
President, with the permission of Senator Recto, on page 1, lines 1 to 2, after the word delete the words Medical Scholarship Act and replace it with Doktor para sa Bayan Act, Mr. President. I so moved, Mr. President.
So you are retaining the title, an act establishing a medical scholarship and return service program for the service duty in the province. You're just amending the title, the short title, and you want it to be known as
Bayan Act, Mr.
Para
President.
sa Bayan Act.
Yes, Mr.
All right.
President, you're correct.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. Majority Leader.
That's it, Mr. President. I believe there are no more amendments to be made on this very, very good measure. Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Richard Gordon?
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized, but Senator Villanueva, I saw you. When Senator Gordon raised his hand, why didn't you touch your forehead? Go ahead,
What,
Senator
Mr.
Gordon.
President?
You're recognized.
No, we
He's
were
a
talking to
co-author,
each
don't
other
worry.
most of the time, Mr. President.
No, he's a co-author, don't worry. The Senator Gordon, go ahead.
No, Mr. President, I just wanted to follow up on the comments made by the minority floor leader, which concerns me. And I don't know if it's already been taken out because I go in and out of the room for various reasons, Mr. President. The first one is I'd like to say that I'd like to congratulate the distinguished gentleman from Bulacan and all the co-authors, because this is certainly a bill that is needed. But we have to make sure it works, as Senator Ridon pointed out. Because, for example, I don't know if it had already been taken up. Have we considered the fact that we would have to have a plantilla for all these doctors when they graduate, so that these doctors can be absorbed not only in the hospitals. Of course, there are other programs like Doctors to the Barrios that they can be brought to a rural health clinic or to a municipal health as municipal health officers or city health officers, as the case may be, and that there should be a plantilla for all these doctors. Otherwise, walang pupunta sa probinsya niyan because walang plantilla. Wala silang pagkukunan ng sweldo. Although I noticed, Mr. President, that in the past year, we have what they call human resources for health deployment. And the budget for this year, if I'm not mistaken, has been brought down to 16 billion, down from 26 billion, Mr. President. From 26 billion. So, kung papairalin ito, baka wala tayong doktor na uuwi. It will not be covered, for example, by this provision in the budget, as well as other provisions such as yung kinuhanan ng araw ng Demvaxia, yung tinatawag natin miscellaneous employment.
Personal benefits.
Personal benefit fund, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we agree with the statements made by our distinguished colleague from Zambales. And as pointed out earlier, that in the coming budget deliberation, it is important that in the deliberation of SUC budget and DOH budget, it should be tackled, Mr. President. However, Mr. President, in this particular measure, it is more of a medical scholarship for our doctors, Mr. President.
I understand that, and I'm wholeheartedly supporting it. In fact, I was going, mabilis ang Senate President, I was going to say scholar para sa bayan. Ang pangalan sana dapat ito, no? Kasi tayo yung mga taga-UP, nasabi natin scholar ng bayan. Ito ay scholar para sa bayan, medical scholar para sa bayan. But it's there. If we can make an amendment, I'll make the proper motion kung pwedeng pumayag si Senator Recto na para malinaw yung sasabihin doon. But before we go into that, Mr. President, I just want to point out na this is still all inchoate. In other words, it's an expectancy depending on the budget. I was reading a very interesting article from Rappler. I don't know how accurate it is. And it's very critical of the government, but I think it's kind of it's there. It speaks for itself, and it paints a very big picture that health will be lowered in this coming year in spite of the pandemic. And I don't really believe that. I think any government will try to improve that budget to address all these health problems brought about by the pandemic. So I'm not really in total belief. We're just in early days of the budget. And I'm sure even if it is not there, it will be put in by our colleagues here, including this representation na yung kailangan gawin para sa health magawa. So I just wanted to make sure na it's called inchoate, in expectancy pa ito. And when the budget comes in, we should all join ranks and say the next 3 years, dapat may plantilla talaga na paglalagyan, hindi yung haka-haka na mayroon tayong budget sa tinatawag nating human resource for health deployment. Because I wonder, is a gentleman aware how much of this budget has been spent for deployment in the provinces?
The records right now, Mr. President, but for 2021, there is a budget of 16.6 billion pesos allocation for the DOH human resources for health program for purposes of expanding deployment of health professionals in critical areas and during health emergencies, Mr. President.
I understand that, Mr. President, but I'd like just to inform gently my good colleague that the budget last year for that was 26 billion 110. Now it's down to 16 billion. So maghahanap tayo ng pera.
I agree na hindi dapat binawasan yan, Mr. President.
Which is exactly the point of our colleague Senator Drilon na paganda tayo para sa mga medical facilities na ilalagay natin. Saan tayo kukuha? Otherwise, it becomes a dead letter law na nangako tayo tapos hindi magagawa. And that's why this is really a heads up to all of us to make sure that the administration walks our talk because we are supposed to be the source of the purse strings of the government. Would that be correct, Mr. President?
kailangan bantayan talaga, Mr. President.
Now, having said that, Mr. President, I know that there is a program where we send our doctors to the barrios, and there are doctors that are deployed. Maybe we can put in additional programs na formal na talaga, I think it's already in operation. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you can enlighten me. Now, when a doctor from this wonderful program that you're going to create, medical scholarship program, graduates, we are saying that he must pay for it by working a few years in the local government. Is that correct? Or in the local communities?
Mr. President, yes.
And he would have to sign a document to that effect.
Yes, Mr. President.
And if he doesn't, and he says, babayaran na lang, mangungutang ako, papalitan ko na lang yung nilagay yung pera dyan, di mawawala rin yan. Because certainly, yung mga doktor gusto rin nila makapag-specialize. Gusto nila maka-improve ng kanilang situation ng buhay ng pamilya nila. No? Sinanla yung kalabaw para maging doktor. At ngayon, hindi na sila magsasala ng kalabaw dahil meron ng scholarship program. So kung talagang magkakaroon tayo niyan, we want to be assured that there will be a consistent flow, a continuous flow of graduates of medicine into the rural areas, especially in the fastnesses of our villages. Tingnan, ang mga problema natin, polio is back. The Red Cross has just inoculated about almost 1 million people this year. Sa polio, we have also inoculated some measles. And we're just assisting the Department of Health. I don't know what they've done so far. But certainly, ganun rin dito. If we're going to put these doctors there, kailangan, you must not send them there on their bare bodies without the necessary tools, equipment, and I think there's also a provision for that. Now, is it possible, Mr. President, as we've done this in high schools before, na pwede magkaroon ng voucher system? For example, in Batangas, and I'm not intruding in the kingdom of Congressman Vilma Santos Recto, na magaling na ang ganda ng programa nila doon, na hindi pa pwede magbigay tayo ng voucher para yung mga doktor na madadagdag dyan, may assign natin dyan sa mga medical schools na yan na wala pa sa ibang lugar para yung mga doktor na yan, ang kondisyon, idadali sila sa mga lugar na wala pang doktor. Would that be possible, Mr. President?
President, that's one of the amendments of Senator Recto, yung identification, Mr. President, yung mga doctorless na mga towns, Mr. President, that would be prioritized doon po sa mga magiging doctor scholars ng ating bayan, Mr. President.
I'm aware of that, and I commend Senator Recto for that. But I'm really pushing it one step further, if I may. That, okay, ina-identify natin kung saan kulang, but meron some are more equal than others in terms of being endowed with hospitals na malalaki, no? Like Batangas has several hospitals, Cebu has several hospitals, as Senator Cayetano pointed out, wala yung Bohol. Pwede tayo maglagay doon ng tinatawag na voucher system na susuportahan natin yung hospital na yan ng mga graduates, at pagka-graduate, ang kondisyon, walang medical school doon sa Bohol, yung graduate yan, papadala sa Bohol. Yung graduate doon sa Batangas, pwede ipadala doon sa 10 areas na wala pang mga doktor. Pwede po ba yun?
Is the objective of the measure, Mr. President, when it comes to return service, Mr. President.
Yes, precisely. But I'm just saying, I'm particularizing this proposal, if I may, if the gentleman is willing, I'd like to put that subject to style, that amendment na allowing other students who want to finish medicine, but in their area they have no medicine, they will become scholars, let's say in Batangas or that matter any other areas where they have a surplus of hospitals and teaching hospitals, so that they can attend that and then they can go to the provinces that as envisioned by Senator Recto.
We'll coordinate with Senator Gordon's office and subject to style. That is the proposal a while ago of Senator Recto, and we wanted to strengthen that idea, Mr. President, to make sure na ma-identify natin yung mga lugar na wala pong mga doktor, wala din medical schools na nag-o-offer, at kung wala man public, yung private po matap din, Mr. President. Yes.
That's correct, Mr. President, because we're doing that also in high schools right now, where there's in the private sector, they have a surfeit, especially after we changed the system in the high schools. and we started using them to aid the private schools para yung kakulangan sa eskwela ay doon dinadala sa mga private schools. So, Mr. President, those are just my observations. There are others, but I don't want to delay the proceedings. Again, I commend Senator Villanueva. I think Senator Recto would like to make a statement. I will stand by also for Senator Recto's amendment.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. Thank you so much.
Yes, Mr. President, Majority Leader.
Go ahead, the President Pro Tem. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a query, are we now already at the title, Mr. President?
Yes,
The wrong title?
Yes, are you changing it?
Yes,
Mr.
yes.
President, sorry. I still reserve to make amendments. I was not called yet. I just conferred with the amendment of Senator Angara, but I had a separate reservation. And
All
in
right.
fact,
Senator Cayetano is recognized before we go to the title.
yes. Actually, Mr. President, my reservation was for tomorrow because I was busy on the Committee of the Whole report. But I'm prepared to do it if you can give me a minute suspension. I'm just reviewing it right now.
Magpa-closing period of amendments para ihabol tomorrow.
What does the majority leader say?
Uh, well, I'm willing to work and wait, no problem, Mr. President. If Senator Pia can come up with the proposals early enough, and maybe if you want, Mr. President, we can take up first the. Oh, okay, I think she's ready, Mr.
No, I'm
President.
just saying
We
all I need is
recognize.
1 minute. I only need a minute. I just have to read it now to myself. It's a paragraph long only. So if
All
you
right.
can give me 1 minute, I'll be ready.
Session is suspended for 1 minute.
Pia, habang wala, baka gusto mong banggit. Here.
Yes, June.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Pia Cayetano for her amendments?
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 6, after line 8, insert a new section which shall read as follows.
Sorry, page 6, line.
After line 8, so it's a new section 11.
Okay.
Insert a new section 11 and change the numbers after. Is the
Yes, I'm
sponsor
taking
ready?
notes, Mr. President. Yes.
Yes. So it's a new section 11, Human Resource for Health Master Plan. The DOH, in consultation with CHED and other concerned government agencies, shall submit a consolidated Human Resource for Health, open parenthesis, HRH, close parenthesis, master plan to Congress with the goal of ensuring an adequate number of competent HRH for the entire country. May I explain, Mr. President, the reason for this provision? During the period of interpellation, I mentioned that it is not only the doctors that we need to consider in terms of completing in terms of the delivery of healthcare. The doctors' work are complemented by the various health professionals that support the delivery, that support and complete the delivery of healthcare. So I leave it to the sponsor. The reason I want to put this here is because otherwise we'll have to write a whole new bill. So if it is deemed by the sponsor and the body to be consistent with the title and the objective, I'd like to ask DOH to mandate DOH to come up with that human resource health master plan as well.
Yeah.
So that it's not just the doctors. And when we put up the medical schools, it's consistent because those existing tertiary hospitals and the medical schools will need those nurses, those lab technologists, and so on and so forth that we discussed during the period of interpellation, Mr. President.
May I be allowed to respond, Mr. President?
Yes, Senator Villanueva.
Yes, Mr. President, I have no problem with that. I agree with the intention of our good colleague, Senator Cayetano. It's just that I wanted to find out, sana, Mr. President, if there's a difference between the section 23, chapter 6 of the Universal Healthcare Act, yung Human Resources for Health, baka lang po magkaroon ng duplication because in section 23, chapter 6 ng UHC, yung National Health Human Resource Master Plan, the DOH together with stakeholders shall ensure the formulation and implementation of a National Health Human Resource Master Plan and that will provide policies and strategies for the appropriate generation, recruitment, retraining, regulation, retention, and reassessment of health workforce based on population health needs, Mr. President. So if there's no conflict with that, I would accept, Mr. President. Or if there's any difference, Mr. President.
Actually, there's none. I note that there is that provision, but if that's why I said I also leave it to the sponsor because the reason I reiterated it here was because I wanted to ensure that we establish the fact that it's not just the doctors that we need to support in terms of these future scholarships and all, although I know we need to start somewhere. So subject to style, if that is acceptable, we can maybe just make reference to the UHC provision because there is no intention to duplicate or to even be a conflict. If we can just make reference to that, because my idea is when you read the bill and the law, they are cognizant of the fact na hindi natin nakalimutan yung ibang part of the puzzle. Yun lang naman yung objective of Mr. President. So I leave it up to the chair if it's okay to amend that subject to style.
Okay, I agree. Accept, Mr. President, subject to style.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted. Subject to style.
I think for the last amendment, Mr. President, I think Senator Recto and this representation during the break talk about this, Mr. President. for the long title, Mr. President, of this measure, if I may. It will read as follows: an act establishing a medical scholarship and return service programs for deserving students with a view of achieving the goal of one town, one doctor program and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Senator Gordon is raising his hand. May he be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
I just wanted to be sure whether my manifestation was understood, that I was going to submit very short amendments tomorrow, if that is all possible. I made that manifestation, if it's okay with the. I know that you are in a hurry to have this bill approved. I am so too, but I'd like to make very short amendments just to clarify certain matters. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, of course. I'm sure the majority leader and the sponsor will have no objections.
Yes, Mr. President. Anyway, we can get a clean copy of all the amendments, and then tomorrow we can approve it right away on second reading after the amendments of Senator Gordon are hopefully tackled immediately. And yeah, no problem, Mr. President, because anyway, third reading will still be on Monday next week. So,
Right. So,
even if we approve it today or tomorrow, it will still be Monday next week for third reading.
all right. Better yet. So, the secretary is directed to furnish the senators a clean copy by tomorrow morning, so that in the afternoon we can have a clean copy before the amendments proposed by Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, Mr. President, we move to suspend consideration of the matter for
Any,
tomorrow.
any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of 1520 is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of, before we move to resume consideration of the last part of our agenda, the last measure, we just like to put on record, I was told by Ma'am Grace Poe, or Senator Grace Poe, that she would also like to be made a co-author of the first item on the agenda, which is the bill on minimum height requirement, or Senate Bill number 1560, with the permission of the body, Mr. President.
Yes,
And,
Senator Grace Poe is recorded as a co-author.
Thank you. May we
Mr.
recognize Senator
President.
Grace Poe, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader. I just have to make a manifestation. Actually, I was quite surprised that I wasn't co-author. I was one of the ones that submitted it when I was chair of public order in the last Congress. But anyway, it was just a confusion. But as you know, that was one of my challenges growing up. Was my height. And so I thank the chair of the committee for sponsoring this bill. I think it will be really a meaningful bill, and it will help the PNP. And so I am very honored to be part of this. Thank you, Majority Leader and Mr. President.
All right, may kasabihan sa Tagalog, walang malaking nakakapuwing. Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
I don't know whether I was made co-author. I'd like to be co-author also of the 5-3 law, Mr. President. It's the 5-3. So that, ang tawag ko dyan the cool cut law, which is kulang sa sukat, Mr. President. So I'd like to be made co-author if Senator De La Rosa and the rest of the Senate will agree. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Senator De La Rosa. And Senator Gordon, wala pa ako sa 5-3. Hindi ako aabot doon.
Thank you, Mr. President. So
Thank
we
you.
take note of the manifestations of our distinguished colleagues, Senator Grace Poe and Senator Richard Gordon. I believe Senator Amy was also raising her hand. Or were you raising your hand, ma'am?
Senator Amy Marcos is recognized.
Yes, I'm sorry, but I think I was already included as a co-author previously. Just checking.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, Mr. President, we move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1807. This is an act declaring the month of October every year as National Cooperative Month. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration is in order.
Mr. President, being a happy bill and very, very simple measure, just recognizing the month of October for our cooperatives all over the country. No member wishes to interpolate the measure. We move to close the period of interpellation, Mr. President.
Hearing no objection, period of interpellation is closed.
Mr. President, we move to the period of to the period of amendments, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments open.
Mr. President, no member wishes to propose any amendments, as well as there are no committee amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection?
move to close.
Hearing none, period of amendments is closed.
Before we act on the second reading on the measure, Mr. President, may I make all members of the Senate be paid co-authors of the measures? I have a list of about 15 senators who texted me, Mr. President. Can we just make it all members na lang po as co-authors, if of course with no objections from the
We
body?
will place that on record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1807. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill 1807 is approved on second reading.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We're extremely delighted. The cooperative movement is extremely delighted. And I also thank my Vice Chair, Senator Risa Ontiveros, for supporting this, and all the members who also supported the measure and gave us the moral support. Mr. President, there is one last item that's not on the agenda, but with the permission of the body. It's actually a resolution expressing our profound sympathy on the death of Manay Ichu, Vera Perez Maceda. It's so sad that she passed away today. And so I move, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 515. I so move, Mr. President.
Yes, PS Resolution 515 was earlier referred to the Committee on Rules, and the rules allow the chairman of the Committee on Rules to report out any measure. Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of 515 is in order. The Secretary will please to read the title of the measure.
Resolution expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the death of Ms. Maria Azucena Manaichu Vera Perez Maceda, the pioneer of the Philippine film industry.
Mr. President, would you like to? Yes, Mr. President. Would you like to say a few words to sponsor the measure?
Well, the whereases are very clear, Mr. President, or Your Honors. I will just submit a sponsorship speech of the resolution.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. May we
President.
recognize Senator Grace Poe as well, Mr. President?
Yes, I'm sure Senator Grace Poe and Senator Amy Marcos would be willing to do the same, because they have been very close friends to Manaichu. Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, first I'd like to thank you for that resolution, for the very swift action that you've taken to give honor to our good friend and our leader in the industry, Marichu Vera Perez Maceda. If there's any person who I can say has integrity and a real compassion for the movie industry, for the artists, for the directors, producers, for the crew members, it would be Tita Marichu, as we fondly call her. She was an active member of the Mowel Fund, an officer of the Mowel Fund, of the Film Academy, of the PMPPA as early as of that time, and I think that Senator Gordon was also part of that, and also of the MMFF recently. Tita Marichu had sacrificed so much so she could give her time, her effort, and even her finances to help those in the movie industry. She was really a shoulder to cry on. She was compassionate but brutally frank. She was the one who fought the fight that was probably never really in one you could consider winning, but she stuck to it, unwavering, courageous. So I would like to thank her. And I remember as a young adult, I remember when I was looking for a school, she was the one that accompanied me and served as my backer, because my dad didn't want to part with me leaving the Philippines and studying abroad. But she was the one who convinced my dad to allow me to explore and have my freedom. She was also one of my chaperones when I first started dating. So, aside from being somebody I look up to in the industry, she's a very close family friend. And I'm very lucky to have met a woman like her. And she's a tita everyone yearns to have. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure Inday Susan is very saddened. Like my wife, early this morning, she was devastated completely. Anyway, Senator Amy Marcos is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And like Manang Helen and my own mother, so many are devastated today with the news that Tita Ichu Manay is gone. Together with my father, Tita Ichu and her father, Doc Perez, celebrated the power of film and its power over Filipinos. Tita Ichu, in addition to her crusade for local cinema, was also a treasured family friend, feisty, compassionate, truthful to a fault. In the many struggles of the local film industry, as well as in the many, many years that she spent with my family, we could not have found a better advocate or friend. We will miss her sorely. Goodbye, Tita Ichu. We will continue the fight for Filipino film. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Napakalungkot po na balitang sumalubong sa ating ngayong umaga dahil sa pagpanaw sa edad na 77 ng isang haligi ng sining at ng pelikulang Pilipino. Si Marichu Vera Perez Maceda o Manay Ichu para sa malalapit at nagmamahal sa kanya. Tulad ko po, Manay Ichu was born into the Philippine film industry at ang mga Vera Perez ang nagtatag ng isa sa naging pinakamalaking film outfits ng bansa, ang Sampaguita Pictures. Ang Sampaguita Pictures po ang nakadiscover sa aking ama. Kung wala pong Sampaguita, baka walang naging Ramon Revilla at wala rin sigurong Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. Kaya naman, si Manay Ichu ay isa ng hindi lang po matalik na kaibigan, kundi pamilya na. Simula pa ng aking ama, na lalo pang napagtibay nung siya po ay naging ninang namin sa kasal ni Senate President Ernesto Maceda, sa kasal namin ni Lani. Bukod sa mahusay na film producer at nagbibigay ng hanap buhay sa maraming manggagawa sa industriya, pinangunahan din ni Manay Ichu ang pagtaguyod sa Mowel Fund, Metro Manila Film Festival, Experimental Cinema of the Philippines, ECP, at Film Academy of the Philippines, FAP. Mga organisasyon at institusyon na patuloy na nangangalaga at nagpapahalaga sa sining ng paggawa ng pelikula sa ating bansa. Hindi matatawaran ang kanyang naging kontribusyon sa larangan ng singing na matatapatan lamang ng kanyang kabutihan at pagtulong sa kapwa, lalo na sa mga maliliit na manggagawa sa pelikula. Ang kanyang mga nauulilang mga anak, kay Manay Gina de Venecia, Tita Betchay, at ang iba pang kanyang mga kapatid, kaanak at kaibigan, our most heartfelt condolences and prayers po sa inyong lahat. Thank you, Mr. President. Manay Ichu, goodbye.
Thank you. Majority Leader?
Mr. President, may I recognize as well Senator Gordon? I would like to give us.
Recognized.
Manifestation on the wonderful, feisty, principled member of the Senate by affinity, Mr. President. She was married, after all, to Senator Macedo for a long time. And I can speak about our friendship because she was always after me for championing Western movies. She wanted to Philippinize the whole movie industry, and I was then a attacker law, and I was assigned to counter the move. But we always remained steadfast friends, Mr. President. My family is part of the movie industry. We showed a lot of Filipino films and a lot of Western films as well. And I can remember Manay Ichu, who would always tease me about the fact that I was always against it. Sabi niya, huwag ka nang appear pagka may hearing. Dahil you can now talk everybody, including Arab and everybody. And I said, di naman nagsasalita masyado sa Arab eh. Pero it was really a very, very good friendship that I have sorely missed because quite frankly, I've not seen Marichu for a long time. I went to school with her brother, Ibito Vera Perez, and who also has been debilitated. I think he already passed away as well. And also Gina is a very, very dear friend of the family and of Kate. And certainly we mourn with them. And certainly the PMPPA, the Mobile Fund, experimental theaters, all these are advocacies of Marichu and or what you call Manay Ichu, and certainly they will miss a very, very sterling champion in Manay Ichu. I agree with the family. I agree with the movie industry. Certainly agree with all the people she has touched, and there are certainly a lot of them. And I salute her for her steadfastness, for his consistency in defending Filipino movies, and we will miss her very much. I congratulate the Senate President for immediately coming out with the resolution. I just found out about it really just now. It's a problem with the COVID. Sometimes you just miss a friend, and they pass on, and you catch it late. But not to worry, Marichu Maceda will be much mourned, much missed, and certainly remembered. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Yes, she was in and out of the ICU for some time because of a number of ailments. Anyway,
Yes.
as the principal author, I manifest that all the members of the Senate, led by Senator Grace Poe, Amy Marcos, Bong Revilla, and Dick Gordon, and all the other members of the Senate be made co-authors of the said resolution.
Yes, Mr. President, I was about to make that motion. I thank the principal sponsor for allowing us to be made co-sponsors. Mr. President, my experience with Tita Ichu is being that Ninang Gina de Venecia is my Ninang, my wedding Ninang. We've had many lunches and many dinners in the house of the Venetias, and Manay Ichu was always a very close supporter of their family, and I've had the privilege at least to have met her and known her. So yes, Mr. President, with that I move to adopt, Mr. President, subject to style, Senate Resolution number 515. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Senate Resolution 555 is hereby adopted, subject to style.
Thank you, Mr. President. With a very productive day today, no other matters to take up. We move to adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, September 8, 2020. I so move.
Hearing no objection, the session is hereby adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, September 8, 2020.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.